think I just fixed it.
Hello, hello. Hey, we're having a little bit of technical stuff going on
Never.
here, you know, which is normal.
Hello.
Hello. And
Just fix it.
hello, hello. Hey, we're having a little bit of technical stuff going on. Rookie mistake again. Rookie mistake. Okay.
Exposure, Manuel. It's a little bit of
This
Manuel.
is the weirdest freaking thing.
I keep getting confused, Jeff, by the picture of you with your microphone in Evernote. I keep looking at it going, Jeff, you're frozen.
Oh. Yeah, and you keep changing to a different outfit.
Yes. How'd you do that?
What is wrong with you? And different glasses and everything.
Very good, though.
Yeah, I can see. I get confused easily, too. What was I going to... Oh, I know what I need to do. I need to find that file. Excuse me. F for family show. Family show. And right there. I'm going to put it right there.
Family show, ladies and gentlemen. Family show.
You hear that, right?
Yep, loud and clear.
Good.
This is the damnedest thing I've ever seen.
That's still not picking up the Scarlet.
No,
and,
I've got it. I've got it turned on. Scarlet USB.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sound preferences. Scarlet USB. Sound effects. Let's try now.
So within Audio Hijack, that little block for the
is
input
red.
device, and you've clicked on that, and you have the Scarlet selected.
Yeah, it says input device, big old red block with a yellow diamond with the little exclamation Scarlet Soul USB. It's seeing it.
So okay, click on that block, and then under audio device, like select something else, and then select Scarlet again. Sometimes there are sometimes two instances of it in that little drop down menu.
Huh? Now I just hit record and it decided to turn blue again. Okay, well, whatever. That's fine.
Audio Hijack does that when it gets confused about not getting a signal. Now, are you actually? Is it picking up the Scarlet USB?
Yep, it is. It is working, and it's AAC 128 mono.
Okay.
So it's showing the peak in RMS. So it's showing recording, and I'm looking at the recording, and it's
awesome.
Well, it's not recording.
Well, hey, can we start now, please?
Well, let's see if Steph's
I'm back.
Has stabilized.
I have no idea, but we should probably just start.
Soul USB, no output.
What?
It shows recording, but it's saying no output.
What is saying no output?
The down by where it shows the time recording, it says running, and it's Scarlet's. It says next to it Scarlet Solo USB to no output.
And this is an Audio Hijack?
Mm-hmm.
Where are you actually reading that? At the very bottom?
Very bottom.
Okay. So that little dot on the lower left-hand part of the window, it's not red?
Nope. It's white.
Okay. So under the recorder in the actual window, the recorder block, do you have it active?
No, that's the thing. It's not showing.
Is it grayed out?
Yeah, it's great. Here, let's try this.
Click on that and then turn it on.
Yep, there we go. Got it. I was 1/2 of a second ahead of you.
And what should that setting be again? Just because I think mine changed when it.
It's 128.
AAC
no,
mono.
I'm sorry, AAC. Yeah.
Huh?
Eh?
I don't know.
You okay?
Well,
This might work. I have no idea. I'm sorry, guys. I don't know what's going on.
Okay. We'll just cross our fingers and hope this works. And if not, then we'll just make do.
Yay! Wow.
I'm ready.
I know you are.
I am too.
Wow. Wow.
Is that loud enough?
Oh, yeah. Oh, let's do that. Let's start our recorders. And let me hit my record button. Boom. It's recording. And let's get our clacker devices from
No.
Mr. Neville Bounds. Okay. Ready? Okay. 3, 2, 1. Thank you, Jordan. Jordan says, I think Nick is ready.
Really?
Yeah.
I've been for about 3 hours, but don't let it worry you.
Do we look worried?
No. Unfortunately,
I'm
not.
Not
We
at
are
all.
concerned, though. But not worried. We're concerned.
We're concerned.
We're concerned about your health and your mental well-being.
Yeah, I'm just worried I'm not going to live to see the end of the show. It's taking so long.
That dire, huh?
Well, yeah, I need a doctor, but she's the other side of the bloody planet.
This is not my fault.
Okay. Are we ready? Hey, Nick, are you ready? Airline Pilot Guy, episode 311.
Flight 209er, you are cleared for takeoff. Roger. LA, good morning. 123.9.
Roger. Beat west vector.
Hello, you're listening to the Airline Pilot Guy show, a view from our side of the cockpit door. I'm Captain Jeff, your host, broadcasting live from Studio 1A in the APG headquarters building in Roswell, Georgia. In this episode, a Ukrainian Antonov AN-148 crashes shortly after takeoff from Moscow. A tour company helicopter crashes in the Grand Canyon. EASA issues an emergency directive regarding uncommanded in-flight shutdowns of A320neo and A321neo engines. More news, your feedback, and this week's Plain Tale. All blood runs red. So get all settled in, tray tables and seat backs in their upright and locked positions. Electronic devices powered on. Flight 311 is ready for pushback. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Airline Pilot Guy Show. It's an aviation podcast where we talk about aviation news and answer a lot of your feedback. And joining me to help with all of that is a doctor, a strength training junkie, an IPA connoisseur, a marathon runner, skydiver, and most importantly, well, maybe not most importantly, but pertaining to this show, a commercial multi-engine instrument-rated pilot, Dr. Steph.
Hello, Captain Jeff. I will say it's been a struggle for me already today, so hopefully the rest of the show goes well. My apologies in advance if I suddenly cut out or become unintelligible. I blame my internet/computer, and I'm not sure what the problem is, but I'll keep working to try and fix it. So
We're gonna push through. We're gonna press on, and I'm
right.
sure that you're gonna figure it out.
I hope so.
Yeah, me too. And also joining us from across the pond in his sprawling country estate southwest of London, professional photographer, former RAF, RAAF fighter pilot, currently a captain for an international airline based in London, Captain Nick.
Well, hello there, Jeff, and hi, Steph. And I see some strange-looking bloke in an orange T-shirt who's yet to be introduced. Yeah, lovely to be back on the show again. I've dragged myself out of my deathbed. I do have the embalming kit all set up downstairs for when I pass peacefully from this mortal coil.
Oops.
and head on to the next life, which does not seem to be very far away at the moment. But
Oh no.
more of that later, I sure.
Okay. Well, yeah, we'll hear more about your health issues shortly. But in the meantime, let's introduce from Well, actually, he's not in his stately southern mansion in Smyrna, Georgia. He is in Rochester, New York. Barbecue master, bourbon connoisseur, motorcycle riding pilot for a major U.S. legacy carrier, Captain Dana.
Oh, hello. How are you guys? And I am really impressed, Jeff. Really impressed. You said Rochester properly.
I know.
It's
I tried. I
Rochester.
really tried hard to do that.
You really did a good job. I have to comment and say that you did a fantastic.
Well, thank you. It's good to
you
be able to
you
do
did
something
Boston proud. And hey, Nick, you might need to get your eyes checked because I think it might be the cold vacation. Today's Valentine's Day, and I'm wearing red today, not orange, red.
Well, you know, it does kind of look a little red. I mean,
You need to get your white balance on your camera fixed, old chap.
Or the terrible lighting in this damn hotel room. It's been a nightmare trying to figure this out. But hey, great to be back in another episode of episode 311. So looking forward to another fun night.
And somebody in the chat room was asking, they're looking at me in the video with my little hoodie jacket kind of thing on. He said, "Is it cold in your house, Jeff?" And yeah, I'm down here in the basement in the dungeon, and I didn't leave the heater on when I left for my 3-day trip, and I just got back, and it is cold down here. So anyway, so I think we have some meetup activity that we can all talk about. Well, not all of us, but some of us, most of us, can talk about. And let's see. Let's start off with Dr. Steph and Captain Dana. You both were meeting up together along with someone else yesterday, right?
That is correct. Yeah, we had a little meetup last evening, up in just north of where I live. I don't know if I should say
Greensboro?
exact. Well, yeah.
Don't
say it, I guess.
Don't say that. Sorry.
Well, not because it mattered. We don't care if people know where we were, but
Oh,
yeah.
but that other person probably had to drive quite a ways.
yes, I
away
would say
to
I don't know.
join up.
No
with it.
identifying features here. So,
Yeah.
but anyway, we you've heard us talk about that other new podcast, Opposing Bases, a couple times here recently, and we met up with one of the co-hosts of Opposing Bases, RH, and had a really lovely dinner, shared a couple beers, and just chatted about aviation and airline stuff and ATC stuff, and it was a good time. I really enjoyed it. So
Yeah, we will hear a little bit from RH in a little bit, but I had the distinct opportunity after spending a fantastic evening with both Dr. Steph, who thank you very much for taking the time to drive all the way up to visit. I think it was an hour and a half coming up, and
yeah,
probably
it
close to
really wasn't a bad drive up, about an hour and a half and 2 back, and it worked out great because I really had a very light day at work yesterday, unlike today. But
That's
It
right.
was
We let you go
perfect
early,
time.
and you only had like 2.5 beers the whole entire time we were together.
yeah,
So
yeah.
that's not bad. And that
No.
I'll tell you what, and you'll hear it in the feedback with the recording about what happened with the beer. So we'll kind of leave that as a cliffhanger. But yeah, it was very nice to meet RH. I had a nice conversation with them on the radio, leaving out of a Triad Airport area this morning. So it's really, really great podcast. I decided to listen to it, and I think anybody that listens to this show ought to get that perspective, because it really is the opposite perspective of what we have as pilots. It's the other end of the radio. So looking forward to the little feedback on that, and we had a blast. It was fun.
Time out.
Time out.
Did you do more feedback or another audio thing, or are you talking about the thing that I put on Patreon?
I'm talking about the one that has the music. That was the meetup from last night.
Oh,
So he put that on Patreon.
I put that on Patreon.
Yeah,
That's
I
fine.
listened to it this morning on Patreon.
Yeah, that was the meetup from last night.
Yeah, and so I was confused because you guys talked about Coffee Fund Cadre and that kind of thing. So I assumed that.
Yeah,
that
I thought
was
we were
for-
doing it for.
Yeah, for Patreon.
That doesn't. I mean,
Okay, but I should have asked you before I did that. I just made the assumption.
well,
We
after
should be
listening
clear.
to it.
You want to know what, Jeff? I mean, quite honestly, it's the first time I'm actually making the effort to do this, and I'm having a lot of fun with it, by the way. So there is, I guess, we do have to work through a few wrinkles, to make sure that we get on the same page. So I can't say I blame you for assuming that it was just for Patreon. But
'Cause,
yeah,
like-
it was really for the show today.
Okay, some of it sounded like it was for the show, and then other times it sounded like it was strictly for the patrons at Patreon. So I was like, I don't know what.
I don't know. I might have
there
messed
was
that up
there was a
too.
barbecue that I put out. That was my crew log that apparently people really liked.
Okay, this is what
And-
we're gonna do. We're gonna do this. Those lucky people that are part of the Coffee Fund cadre, they got a sneak peek, a preview, a pre-release listen of what we're gonna play on today's show. How about that?
Perfect.
Sounds good.
Because
Okay.
I think I did call it for the. I think I was talking about it being for the.
Yeah, I
coffee
think
fund.
that's what threw me off. I
I'm
think you
sorry
said,
about that because I actually thought that we
it's
were.
Okay.
I wasn't paying enough attention
Gotcha.
last night.
Gotcha.
Too many beers.
So,
All-
and I have a
all one of
question.
them.
So, like Dana said, you had 2.5 beers. Like, did you waste a half a beer?
No, Dana and I split a beer.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah,
Okay.
we're going to stop right there
Okay.
because it's in the
Okay.
file.
I'm not going to ruin it for you then.
And I sent you that photo today of that half a beer that I had today because I'm really trying to watch what I put into my tummy and my mouth and my waistline.
Okay, where's the picture that you sent me today?
I faxed. I mean, I texted the picture of the beer menu to everybody, and
No, I got the facts. Very nice. My
I don't have a fax machine. I didn't get
fax
it.
machine hasn't started up for about 10 years, and all of a sudden it kicked off, and there was Dana sending me a fax.
So where is the fax?
it's actually a free. It's a picture of the wheat/fruit beers because I'm not a big beer guy, but it says Naked Dove Berry Naked Black Raspberry Ale. That's right up my alley. I had that, but that will go along with the feedback, the meetup from last night.
Okay. We really should have a rehearsal for this.
Why?
I
That
feel like,
takes
I
all
feel
the
like we
fun
need
away.
to start that whole segment over again because I don't even know how you're going to piece that together into something usable.
I don't know either.
You want to start that part over again?
Should we just start from the whole from the top?
Not from the very
No.
beginning. No.
Okay.
No.
So am I
Like-
supposed to be
That's the
showing
beauty
this
of the
while?
show.
Okay, hang on. So I have to have a little time to do prep work and stuff with this kind of thing. I can't just do this on the fly. So I'm waiting. I was looking for the instruction when you sent this photo, Dana, that this was something that we're going to use in the show.
No, you don't need to show that in the show.
Oh, good. Okay, good.
No, that was just between us to kind of.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, you don't need.
All right.
No. That's just a topic of conversation between us because it's talking about nakedness. That's what the beer is talking.
We're going to
about.
talk about naked things.
Yes,
a little
a
bit
family
later.
show.
Yes.
It's a
Well,
family
it's a family naked.
Yes, we were all born naked. We'll all die naked.
Yes. True.
No, I intend to die with my clothes on. I don't know about you.
Because we can't control these things, Nick.
I'm going to go out like Ron Jeremy. I'm sorry.
Let's see.
Jeff, do you have that audio ready to go? Because I'm ready to introduce it, or if you want.
Which audio?
I don't. What are we doing?
Meet
don't
up.
know.
Meet up
audio.
last night.
I think
So I
Steph's
gotta find that piece of audio so I can put it in my sound playing app.
All right, then forget about it.
No,
Let's
I'm
leave
not
it
gonna
for the
forget about
Patreons.
it. No, they shouldn't have all the fun.
I put it in the audio file.
I know you did, and then I took it out and well, never mind. I'm not gonna explain exactly what I have to do to get it to Patreon. So I'm just looking for it. Hang on, I can find it.
In the meantime, should we listen to Plain Tales?
No, I'm afraid that while I'm doing all this stuff in the background, I'm going to mess up the Plain Tales. So, plus, it's way too early to do Plain Tales in the episode.
I was hoping
And
it
you
was
know
nearly
that.
the end by now.
You can go ahead and leave if you want.
Go to bed. Just don't die. We need you next week.
Okay, so let's see. You put it in audio file drop, not in crew logs. Maybe that should have been my clue, because you didn't put it in crew logs. I should have realized that.
Yeah, you should have
didn't
ignored
intend
what
for
I
it
was
to be a
saying
crew log.
because
Okay.
I wasn't paying any attention.
That was my mistake. I heard.
Well, you
Yeah.
should never pay attention to what I say either, because whatever I say doesn't make sense. Clearly, I had to go
what I
back and redo that back half of that.
Okay. Where is that? Just drug it over. There it is. We're almost ready. Almost.
Well, the worst thing is dead air. We don't need
Yeah.
dead air around here.
Yeah, but I say I can snip out all the silence. I do that a lot on the audio show. Right. Let's see if this plays. Okay, you hear that?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay. So how do I start this back up?
I-
Wait. Welcome to episode 311.
Well, we were just starting to catch up, and you were starting to talk to me about.
And you're talking
Meetups.
about the drive wasn't bad. Okay. And
I was just
and
thinking
then,
just
and
start
then
that whole part again.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be as.
I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to start off with when we're introducing Dana. That'll be the easiest for me. Okay, here we go. And joining us, not from Smyrna, Georgia, but from Rochester, New York, barbecue master, bourbon connoisseur, motorcycle riding pilot for a major U.S. legacy carrier, Captain Dana.
Well, great to be back. Another episode. I'm really proud of you, Jeff. Rochester was pronounced properly. As a Bostonian, did a great job with that. And hey, Nick, I know it may look orange because of the cruddy lighting in my room here, but in actuality, it's red for Valentine's Day. So, yeah.
Happy Valentine's Day.
Happy Valentine's Day to all of our listeners. Anyways, looking forward to another great show. 311 on the docket here, and we're gonna get this thing rolling.
All right, let's do that. And because I'm sure that it's going to go just completely smoothly.
It always does.
It always
Absolutely.
does.
Just like
Every time.
As far as everybody knows, it's gone extremely smoothly so far. So, yeah, I understand that you, Captain Dana, and Dr. Steph saw each other recently, and tell us about that.
We did. We had a little get together last night when Dana was on his layover, and we'll just say that was in the Triad area. And it's not too far from where I am, so managed to be done with work a little bit early and drove about an hour and a half up to that area. And we got together with another person who some of our listeners may know from, there's a new aviation podcast out there called Opposing Bases. And it's kind of from the air traffic control side of things. And we met up with one of their co-hosts, RH. So we got together for some dinner, some beers, and just some good aviation conversation.
Excellent. Gosh, I wish that I kind of could hear like almost like we're there, kind of like an audio recording or something of
That would be nice. I think. Go ahead.
Amazingly enough, I
Yeah.
think we may have turned over a new leaf
Uh-oh.
on the show.
We're gonna get better than 50% accuracy?
Better than 50% accuracy.
Don't get too excited.
Impossible.
And Captain Dana's learning how to use technology. You're going to find out here in just a minute.
That's also
really?
impossible.
So, you know what? Oh, yeah, we're hinting that there is actually an audio recording of this wonderful meetup in somewhere an hour and a half away from where Stephanie lives. Okay, here we go.
Anybody recognize that song?
No.
Well, hello, APG listeners. Good afternoon from the Art of Street Food here in Greensboro, North Carolina. Had the pleasure of having dinner with Dr. Steph and a fellow APG listener / podcaster, RH. We've had a fantastic evening of discussing podcasting, discussing the APG show, and of course the RH show, which I'll let him tell you a little bit about. And I'm going to pass over the microphone to, let's go with the ladies first. Let's go to Dr. Steph.
Hey there, Coffee Fun Cadres. Dr. Steph here. I'm mostly here for the beer. Let's be honest about it. Here in Greensboro, North Carolina, I am able to get one of my favorite all-time IPAs, which is the Jade IPA from Foothills Brewery over in Winston-Salem, which is nearby. So I'm enjoying that. And we actually had the distinct pleasure of sampling, tasting a beer, which, don't laugh at the name, it's called Sexual Chocolate. It is a...
And Dr. Steph and I shared that. It was so good.
We did share it, actually. It was very good. If you're familiar with Eddie Murphy's Coming to America, that's where the name comes from for this particular beer, but it's a very good chocolate stout, and I highly recommend it if you're ever in the Winston-Salem / Greensboro area, especially in the month of February, because that's when it's released. So,
Especially me saying that I actually like the beer. That says a lot. That was actually very good.
that does say a lot, because Dana is not, he's self-professed non-beer aficionado. It's not really his thing. So we enjoyed that. But yeah, as Dana said, just having a really good night, enjoying some conversation, some aviation talk, hanging out here with RH from the Opposing Bases podcast. And we've been talking a little bit about things from the air traffic control side of things. And yeah, just really, really enjoyable, and wish you guys all were here with us. But I'm going to pass it over to RH and get his take on the evening. So here you go.
Hey, APG listeners, thanks for tuning in to another episode of the show that got us started. We appreciate all your help at RH and AG's show, the Opposing Bases Air Traffic Talk podcast, which you can find on iTunes as well. I was able to listen to episode 310 of the APG show on Sunday night and heard First Officer Dana, soon to be Captain Dana, mentioning an overnight in the Triad area. And I said, hey, I'm going to reach out and hopefully be able to meet up. And luckily, Dr. Steph was able to drive up from the Concord area and have a nice dinner down at Prayer Brewing Company and the accompanying restaurant, Crafted, the art of the street food. Excellent dinner, excellent conversation. Thank you guys for letting me tag along your overnight. And to all the APG listeners, I really appreciate all the support. You guys have gotten us off to an awesome start. AG is on the other side of the country doing a military exercise. He was unable to join us. AG, we wish you could be here, and hope you're having a great week out in Seattle. Thank you for your service. And thank you, Dana. Thank you, Dr. Stephanie, for the opportunity, and hopefully we'll get to do this again soon. You guys have a good night.
Well, RH, we appreciate you coming out this evening to discuss your brand new podcast, Opposing Bases. I have to admit, I've listened to a couple episodes at this point and think you guys are doing a fantastic job. On behalf of Steph and myself, Dana, I'd certainly like to thank you for coming out, and we really enjoyed the evening. And I know that our Patreons will truly enjoy listening to your podcast. Until next time, we'll see everyone soon, I hope. Bye-bye.
Yay! Excellent. Always nice to hear, little glimpses of these encounters out there. Actually, I have one too that I can play as soon as we're ready for that. But
So did I hear right? AG's out playing or servicing his chopper or playing with his chopper somewhere? What's
That is correct.
That is correct.
playing with his chopper.
Thanking him for his service in his chopper. That's very good. It sounds like fun to me. I mean, he gets paid for that, doesn't he? And he gets a helicopter to play with, and he can do nap of the earth flying and all sorts of fun stuff. So I think he should be thanking us, or actually you guys. You're the taxpayers.
Right.
No. So you definitely had it the right way around the first time. We should definitely be thanking him for his service. So
Yeah. But I'm only joking.
I know.
So how was that sexual chocolate? Was it pretty good? I've had that actually, that beer.
You have had it. Yeah. It's a fantastic beer. I don't get a chance to get it too often down here in Charlotte anymore. They do sell it down here, but it's just nicer to have it closer to the source. So good opportunity.
I had to wipe my mouth afterwards.
Okay.
It was really good.
Where are you, Matt Smith? Where are you? We need you right now.
Family show, ladies and gentlemen. Family show.
Thank you very much. I was in Philadelphia a couple nights ago, and I had to apologize to Colonel Jeff. He was a little upset because I didn't tell him I was there. I just wanted to leave him alone.
For shame.
Yeah, I know. Anyway, I went to Monk's Cafe, and they have a great selection of beer in general, but a really good selection of Belgian beer as well. But interestingly, after dinner, mussels and stuff, I wanted to have some kind of a dessert kind of beer, and ended up getting a Japanese stout, and it was pretty good. It was like an espresso stout from some Japanese brewer, and I was very surprised. I think, really?
Interesting.
Yeah,
So what was this
forgot what the
about? You had another meetup?
Yeah. Let's see. Last night, my first officer and I were planning on getting some Tex-Mex. Well, I think I talk about it in the actual piece of audio feedback. So let me just play that so I don't repeat myself. Hey, we are at the El Real Tex-Mex restaurant here in Houston, Texas. What is this area called? Montrose, near the Heights. I don't know. The kids here know all of this stuff. Anyway, my first officer, Sean, and I were planning on doing a nice Tex-Mex meal here in Houston. It is Mardi Gras, Fat Tuesday, and we were going to do it up. And then we were notified or contacted by some local folks here in the Houston area. And they said, hey, we see that you're going to be here in Houston, and we want to meet up with you. And I thought, okay, well, as long as you want to eat some Tex-Mex, you're more than welcome to. And so here we are at the El Real, and let's see. Let's start with Brendan, who is works for another airline. I don't know what Acme we're going to call it, but he could probably actually tell us exactly what airline he works for, because he doesn't do a podcast, and he's not going to get in trouble, I'm sure. But anyway, here, I'm going to hand the microphone over to you.
Hi, I'm Brendan. I work in ground ops for Acme Heart. It's everyone's favorite Texas-based, directionally named airline.
Everyone's favorite? What?
And I'm just really glad we were able to meet up with Captain Jeff and Sean, show them one of my favorite restaurants in Houston, and have a good time. It was a good thing we were able to catch them.
Hi, I'm Jacob, ex-Acme operations agent, now turned consultant. Was glad to meet up with Captain Jeff and Sean and the other local Houstonians here, and have some great Tex-Mex and margaritas, and catch up and talk a bunch of plane talk.
Hey, this is David. Glad to be here. Thanks for having us, Jeff. We greatly appreciate it. Worked for the airline that Dana worked for on the regional side for many years, and then left the industry. Still involved in aviation through Civil Air Patrol.
Hi, I'm Tommy, ex-IT for Acme Dental and Acme United, and now changing careers to be a full-time pilot. I just finished my commercial rating and getting my CFI and all that soon, and taking this journey. So just great to meet Jeff out here. Thanks.
It's great to meet all of you, and as I always say, I enjoy doing the podcast, and it's great hanging out with good friends, the crew every week, and the folks that show up for the live recording and the chat room and all that kind of stuff. That's awesome. But the best part of this whole thing is getting to go somewhere, and then people say, hey, I see that you're going to be in Houston, and let's do a meetup. And it's the best part of this whole aviation community, this whole podcasting thing, is getting together with folks like all of these great people here at El Real. So we're keeping it El Real, and I'm going to sign off now before I say something else that's really, really stupid. The best part of APG is the community. I just came up with that.
That was lovely.
Very good, yeah. I think you should
And
record
also, you
it.
like coffee?
I took it from
Folgers.
Folgers in your cup. The best part of waking up.
Are they sponsoring
Anyway.
the show now?
They are. They're.
Are we, or are we just paying them money?
Yeah, we'll probably have to pay their lawyers money
Yes.
for that. Sorry. Yeah. So anyway, it was a great time. And again, totally unexpected. And it was interesting because I was telling my first officer, Sean, I said, "Hey, would you mind if we, like, one or two other people kind of join us for dinner?" And I could tell he was like, not really sure if this is a good idea. And, because we had to get up really early this morning. He was probably thinking we were going to be out really, really late. And I said, "Oh, no, we're just going to eat and, have some good conversation and then get a good night's sleep and all that." And anyway, more and more people just kept showing up to the El Real, and it was crazy. And but actually, he said he really enjoyed it. He said it was a great conversation, great folks. And he was actually pleased that he was a part of the meetup. Wasn't planning on it, but anyway, we had a good time in Houston, Texas. And let's see, what else? Captain Nick,
Yes, sir.
have you been doing anything of note since our... we just recorded, on Saturday, so it hasn't been that many days. But I have a feeling that you've been kind of busy doing stuff.
Well, I was a little bit because I don't know, wait, you'll know, but our listeners won't. We just cut the live feed, and I was saying, I'll be going on call in a minute. Now, what had happened was I was due to be in the simulators for sort of 2.5 days, and they decided there was someone much more deserving. So they took those simulators away from me and put me on a kind of a standby followed by a work day. And that standby started at 9:30 at night, and it's only supposed to be to give me a replacement simulator. So I was a bit surprised when the phone went. So I went, "Oh, dear." They found me a sim, and they hadn't, of course. There's a little caveat in our requirements that says if there's an operational disruption and they will possibly have to cancel a flight, which obviously is a big financial penalty, let alone the disruption to all the passengers, they can give us a trip. So they called me out and said, "Oh, Nick, we need you to fly tomorrow morning relatively early." I had to be up around 7. And then, you're going to go to Barbados. And then because we don't have enough time to give you a full trip, you're going to stay on the airplane and come straight back home again. And I went, "Oh, no," I knew that was going to be a bit of a killer. And I was also starting to get a bit coldy because I don't know if you remember on the show, I was starting to feel a little bit under the weather, but I felt okay to fly at that point. So I said, "Yeah, okay, fair enough." Got up the next morning and I'm having a shower and I wrenched my back. Now I'm in a lot of pain and I sort of crawling out the shower on my hands and knees going, "Oh my God." So I lay down for a little while and managed to relax just enough to be able to sort of get dressed and stagger downstairs. And I phoned them up and said, "Look, I've done my back in. I'm in a lot of pain. Any chance you've got a spare captain to do this trip? Because I don't think I'm going to be fit." They said, "Nope, you're it. If you don't pitch up, we cancel the flight. We've got 240 passengers waiting for you here. And of course, if you don't fly the aircraft out to, where was I going again? Somewhere in Barbados, thanks. Then, of course, you've got all those passengers there waiting to come home. And in both cases, we'll have to find hotel rooms for them all." So I said, "Okay, well, look, if I can get to the airport, I'll see how I feel. I'll take some painkillers." And I got to the airport. The cold was starting to get a bit bad. I was starting to feel a bit croaky, but managed to fly the aircraft. So we did the trip out. It wasn't too bad. I was safe to operate, but I just was feeling a bit rough. Of course, then everyone dives off to the hotel and drinks rum cocktails. I, of course, stay at the damned airport. And as soon as they turn the airplane around, like a couple of hours later, I'm dragged back onto it and then have to stay on. So that was like a 26-hour day for me by the time. I mean, I got a little bit of sleep on the way back, but no more than like 4 hours probably. By the time I got home, I was, had a real cold. My back wasn't much better. I was still in a lot of pain. So that's been me since then. I've still got this cold. I've still got my back. It's not in spasm anymore. It's kind of a bit more relaxed, but it's every time I move it, I can feel it twinge, and it's I've got to get some treatment for it. But that's another story. But so I've had a bit of a miserable few days, and I'm supposed to be off to San Francisco on Friday. And I am fingers crossed that I will be fit enough to do that. But at the moment, nah, it's not looking so good. So it was a mean thing to make me do. Like they're very mean to me, my company. But yeah, I know it's not fair, is it?
No, it's actually kind of sad, really.
Yeah, it is sad.
I don't know why it's not playing.
Nice try.
Yeah.
No, but we don't have any sympathy.
It's because you don't really care. I can tell.
Actually, it's because I have two keyboards in front of me and I keep pressing the wrong keyboard. Here we go.
So sad.
It is a sad situation. We do not like to hear or see you ill.
Sick or in pain or
Yeah.
all of the above. Overworked.
Well, I'm all three of those now.
He's sick all the time.
Yeah, well, I try to be. So, because I get paid when I'm sick, unlike you guys. So,
we do too.
We did too.
Go and you get more money if you fly a trip.
Yeah, depend. Yeah, and there's a certain amount, a full pay, and then after a certain period, then it reverts to what is it, 60%, Dana, or something
50.
like that.
That's
50%.
for short-term disability is 50%.
Okay.
Anyway. There you go. Anyway, so I mean, I get the majority of I still get a little bit more when it's flight pay, but
yeah.
And so I did my plain tail, in fact, this morning, hoping that my voice would be okay. And I'm going to apologize to everyone. I sound like a squeaky frog trying to do my plain tail. I will re-record it for the for the website when eventually we get that page up and running. So in future you'll be able to hear it in my more normal voice. But today I sound awful.
Well, right now you sound. I listened to it a couple of hours ago, and I'm thinking I was really feeling bad for you. You sound a lot better now than you did when you recorded that.
Okay.
Tail. Yeah.
I just can't get my voice to go below this certain pitch at the moment. It's sort of stuck up here in a falsetto, I feel.
Nah, it doesn't sound that high.
You'll falsetto when you bent over and hurt your back. Why were you bending over in the shower?
I was.
I just
Moving
don't
on.
know.
Is
Were
it
you
time
picking?
for the coffee fund?
Were you picking up some soap?
No, I was washing my feet.
On a rope?
I have soap on a rope. Yeah, I don't bend over to do that. But I'm
Lift
not
up your
in the
feet next time.
I'm not in the Navy, so I don't worry too much about that. I don't have to shower with my back to the wall.
Or you never bend over to pick up the soap if you're in a penitentiary. That's what I hear
very
anyway.
true. Exactly.
I'm not sure why, but anyway, let's move on. Family show and all that. Okay, let's see. We talked about on an earlier show about the Talons, Douglas, and Larry Gregory actually set the record straight. He said, it was me, and I was watching the video using the closed captioning on, and on the closed captioning, he sent a little snapshot of the screen, a little screen capture of where it says visibility and talons. Take care, Douglas. So
that must have been a while ago, Jeff. You look quite
young
in that picture.
Yeah, I was. Thanks. I think it was like about the beginning of last year, January of last year, I believe. I'm really aging quickly.
Well, it must be this show.
Yeah, I think so. Hanging out with you guys.
Or all the new first officers you're flying with.
Yeah, that could be it as well. Okay, and then I meant to mention this on the last show. I think after we stopped the recording last week, I talked about this, but I'm going to do it for the record. Matt Todd sent this in. He said, I wanted to write you a note to expand on your discussion about the additional Super Bowl traffic that St. Cloud was supposed to take in. St. Cloud is actually about an hour out from the stadium. The bulk of the private aircraft were going to 3 larger reliever airports inside the Twin Cities metro area, St. Paul Downtown, which is SC, Flying Cloud, FCM, and Anoka County. I'm not sure if that's the way you pronounce that or not, but ANOKA, ANE. I toured around to the airports on Super Bowl Sunday, at St. Paul downtown. They closed 2 of the 3 runways and were using them for the parking of aircraft. The same was being done at Flying Cloud and Anoka County. Also at Minneapolis-St. Paul International, runway 422 was closed for parking of aircraft as well as along the west taxiway for 1735. It was quite a sight to see. And again, that was Matt, Bear Lake, Minnesota. Thank you, Matt, for kind of straightening me out on that one. And then also we have a flight attendant, an Acme flight attendant named Nanette, who sent this in. She said, Jeff, I just wanted to send this FYI to you. I'm an Acme flight attendant and have spent a lot of time on the MD-88. I was just listening to episode 310, which is our last episode. Wanted to send some feedback. Don't sell our beloved Mad Dog short. There have been 2 lithium-ion containment bags on the plane for close to a year. Oops, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
One
okay.
is with the safety equipment in the slide-out compartment just forward of the first-class lav, and one is with the AED. We are taught that there is an extra pair of gloves in the flight deck, question mark. You know what, funny thing is, on this last trip, every trip's a show for me. My first officer was doing the interior inspection, and he was grabbing stuff out of that little, what do you call that little area of the observers, oxygen mask, and there's like a little compartment down there next to, if you're sitting in the jump seat.
Yeah, I know
right
the
leg.
I'm talking about. I don't know.
Doghouse or whatever they call that thing.
Toilet.
No, it's not the toilet, unless we really have to go, and then you got to do what you got to do. Anyway, he pulled out like these 2 packages, and I go, "Oh, we just talked about that on the show.
Love it.
The containment things. I didn't realize we had those on there." And he goes, "Yeah, I think we're only supposed to have 1 up here, but we have 2. We had 2 on that airplane." I went, "Okay." So Nanette, I am now set straight. Thank you very much. So I have to let everybody know that we've dipped below that 50% again. So we're getting
We
straightened
will
out.
try to make it up this episode.
We're going to try.
Yeah.
Don't hold your breath, though. All right. And that is all I have on the intro. If there's anything else that anybody wants to say before we do the coffee fund,
Not for me.
say it now or forever hold your peace. Okay, here we go.
Johnny, how about some more coffee?
No thanks.
I love coffee, I love tea, I love the Java Jive and it loves me.
Coffee and tea and the Java and me. A cup, a cup, a cup, a cup, a cup. Oh yeah. So while the Java Jive singers sing in the background, we'll talk about the Coffee Fund, and that's your way to support the show financially. And since the last episode, using the Coffee Fund Classic method, Stephen Hurst, and a new patron, a new executive producer, Dirk Brom. Again, that's a patron of Patreon, so you can learn how you can take part in the Coffee Fund cadre and giving us some financial support by heading over to airlinepilotguide.com/coffee. Thank you very much for everybody who has supported us currently and in the past, and even those of you who are thinking about it in the future. Do it. A cup, a cup, a cup, a cup, a cup.
Soybeans, cabbage and greens. Ooh, ah, ooh, ah.
Now, if you don't want me to sing anymore, then join the Coffee Fund. Okay, that's enough. Thank you very much, Coffee Fund singers. Oop. Another beautiful fade out.
So professional.
I know.
Perfect.
Only the best.
Absolutely perfect.
Okay. That'll be fixed in post. All right. And now it's time for the news.
Stand by for news.
I'm sure most of you have heard by now, just 1 or 2 days ago, a Ukrainian-made Antonov 148, I believe, crashed just after takeoff, leaving Moscow's. And I was trying to figure out exactly the way to pronounce that, and I did get a little bit of audio here. Let's see. It's Moscow's
Домодедово.
airport. And
Very
can you say
good.
that?
Not in that accent.
I love that. Yeah, let's hear that again. She does a really nice job of pronouncing the Domodedovo airport.
Домодедово.
Mm-hmm. I bet Pip pronounces it exactly like that.
Pip just says, "Hey, Moscow."
Anyway, we should be laughing. The airplane crashed shortly after takeoff, killing all 65 passengers and 6 crew on board. The Saratov Airlines jet vanished minutes after takeoff. The cause of the crash is unclear. This is the initial piece of news from this, and it seems that they were able to find the black boxes. They're actually orange, the cockpit voice recorder and flight data recorder, and they were able to analyze them. And according to the Aviation Herald, on the afternoon of February 13th, the MAK, the investigatory regulatory agency, reported that decoding, or is that right, MAC? Is that what that is? The folks that investigate these things? Could be wrong about that. Anyway, MAK reported that the flight data recorder needed to be torn down. I'm sorry, I'm going to the wrong paragraph. They reported that decoding of the FDR data had been completed. Preliminary analysis shows that the pitot heaters for all 3 pitot probes were off, while the pitot heatings had been turned on prior to departure on the previous 15 flights. So I guess they had 16 flights on the flight data recorder, and so 15 of them they had the pitot heat on, and this accident flight they did not have the pitot heat on. About 2.5 minutes after becoming airborne, a special situation developed at about 1,300 meters of height and a speed of 465 to 470 kilometers per hour, which is about 250 knots indicated, when a disagreement between the speed readings number 1 and number 3 developed, with the speed reading number 2 not registering. Number 1 was showing about 30 kilometers per hour, 15 knots more than number 3, and there was a message that was issued that they were made aware of. No significant altitude deviations between the pitot systems were noted. Okay, so the altimeters were acting properly. At about 2,000 meters height, speed reading number 1 began to reduce while number 3 increased. Another speed disagree message was issued. The crew disconnected the autopilot and continued in manual control. Speed readings from number 3 reached 290 to 300 knots indicated. Number 1 speed readings continued to decrease. 50 seconds after the autopilot was disconnected, the aircraft experienced vertical loads between 1/2 G and 1.5 positive Gs, and the number 1 speed reading reached 0. The number 3 began to decrease, reaching 200 kilometers per hour. The aircraft pitched down to about 30 to 35 degrees below the horizon. The vertical load was 0 G. Before the collision with the ground, number 3 speed readings began to rapidly increase, reaching 800 kilometers per hour, which is 432 knots, just before impact. Number 1 speed readings remained at 0. The pitch angle remained at 30 degrees below the horizon until impact. 5 seconds prior to impact, a right bank of 25 degrees developed. The MAK wrote, a preliminary analysis of the recorded information as well as an analysis of similar cases that occurred in the past suggests that the development of a special situation in the flight could be caused by incorrect data on the flight speed on the pilot's indicators, which in turn was apparently due to icing of the pitot probes when the heating systems are off. So there you have it. We have another instance. It's not the first time, and sadly probably will not be the last, when a situation develops where the pitot tubes, the heated pitot tubes, get iced up. In the case of the Air France tragedy back in 2009, the pitot heating systems were on, but they were just overwhelmed. And in this case, it sounds like the pitot heaters were not on. And if you fly into icing conditions, it doesn't take long at all for those things to ice up. And when the pitot tube gets iced up, you have erroneous readings. And that's when you have to revert to known pitch attitudes and known power settings. And I think that every airline in the world has some kind of a procedure for unreliable airspeed. I would hope, anyway. And that's why we preach that all the time on this show, that you should know for every phase of flight what the pitch picture should look like and what the power setting should be, and then you stay alive.
Yeah, this.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Steph.
I was going to say, and I apologize if my internet has been spotted out. That's if I become unintelligible. But a lot of this information came out pretty quickly because this just happened the other day. So I wonder if there's other factors there that we're just not aware of yet, or if they're pretty confident about that. So.
Yeah, it's in the preliminary stage of the investigation, and that's what they've discovered so far. So, I guess we can, we have to be careful about speculating, too much until we get more information.
Sure.
Yeah. Ever since Air France, it's been, they've emphasized in all our training, how to fly the aircraft using just a power setting and an attitude. And that if all else fails, that's what you revert to. You set the required power setting, set the required attitude, and you just sit on your hands for a little while. It doesn't matter what your airspeed indicators are reading, you'll be safe. And Airbus have got to the point now where they have got a backup speed indicator which doesn't rely on any pitot probes at all. And you can that will eventually come up, and you can actually land the airplane on this. It's based all on the angle of attack. So this is just a very sad thing. I don't know of many airplanes, certainly sophisticated ones, where you and you're going to say that the Mad Dog, you'd have to do this, where you still have to turn your pitot heats on. So for us, it's they will come on automatically. During engine start, and they will remain on. You can manually turn them on to a higher setting on the ground to defrost them if they're badly frozen overnight, for example. But they'll come on at a low setting and they'll go to a high setting once you're airborne, and they stay on for the whole flight. So perhaps this aircraft wasn't that sophisticated, but it's such a shame.
Yeah, every airplane that I've flown so far, you have to manually turn the pitot systems on. But in the airplane that Dana and I are flying right now, the Mad Dog, if you don't turn on the pitot static heat system, you'll have a message in your overhead annunciation panel basically telling you, hey, you don't have your pitot heaters on, and turn them on, dummy.
Yeah.
And what's kind of suspect to me is these pilots are not necessarily unaccustomed to operating in cold weather. I mean, they are, and after all, oh my God. Oh yeah, I can't remember the name of the airline. Aeroflot. I was having a brain fart there for a second. Aeroflot. They don't necessarily always operate in warm conditions.
This is actually a Saratov Airlines. It's not Aeroflot.
Did I miss that? I thought it was Antonov. It's the Antonov. That's right. It's C-type aircraft. Mm-hmm. So, anyways, Aeroflot. So, Russian pilots, just in general, you can cut that out, Jeff. Russian pilots, in general, they're operating in very cold temperatures. So, it'd be very surprising to me if they turned it off on purpose.
No, I can't imagine.
I can't imagine. I'm leaning more towards, again, we can't speculate. It's so early, and who knows how they'll, or what type of findings they're going to find. They release all the information real quick, so that kind of is a little suspicious to me. But we can't speculate. I would imagine. I don't see the pilots turning off the pitot heat, especially not being cold weather pilots.
Yeah, but for me, regardless of how they got themselves into that situation, if they knew the basic, we called it in the Air Force, this is the way I learned how to fly, control performance. You know that this is the pitch picture and this is the power setting, and then that's the control, and then the performance is you look at your performance instruments, your airspeed, your altimeter, etc. And if you are getting the desired performance, then you've set your controls properly. And if you're not used to that kind of fundamental flying philosophy, then you get yourself in trouble when the autoflight system doesn't work.
Well, we're, the AAURS, ours, attitude, aircraft attitude upset recovery, and whatever it stands for, the rest of the acronym that we're doing now. I mean, that's as a result of Air France. And so we are being trained. I don't know, can't speak to how they're training the pilots over in Russia. But maybe they haven't had that training. Maybe they forgot about their training. I don't know, but one would venture to guess, if you're an experienced aviator, that you do understand the premise that, there are times that you could lose your airspeed indicator. And we've always been taught, if you climb or descend, the pitot tube is blocked, you can have either increasing airspeed or decreasing airspeed. And, sometimes you can look at your instrument, sometimes you can always look at your instruments, and you should know about what your EPR settings are or your N1 settings are roughly, and what type of airspeed you can get from them based on the pitch that you have. So that's basic flying 101.
Mm-hmm.
But, people have become too dependent on the technology. And I say people, I should say pilots, have become too dependent on technology. And quite honestly, part of this, the worldwide safety is that we have been trained to utilize technology most of the time, and for the most part, the worldwide crash or incident rate is very low. But then you get these one-offs, two-offs that happen that really accentuates where we're lacking, and that is that we've now turned to technology so much that our basic aviation skills are eroding a little bit. And I think that that may be a factor here. I don't know.
Well, I'm not sure we can call it technology, Dana. After all, it was an airspeed indicator that failed, and they've got an attitude indicator, and they've got throttles. None of that is high tech. None of that is automated or complicated. It's in every basic airplane. So this sounds to me not something that is related to automation. It's something that's related to basic flying skills.
Well, that's what I'm saying, Nick, is that we've been trained now to use automation so much that the basic flying skills have eroded.
Yeah, and we've been preaching that for years on this show, and the NTSB has been warning about this for many years, and finally the FAA in the recent 5 to 10 years have been warning all the operators in the U.S. at least that you need to do something. Your training departments, your check airmen, etc. You need to be preaching the fact that you need to get back to the fundamentals of the basics of flying, and it's just maybe taking a while for everybody to get on that track. But
I mean, and all we have to do is look at that awful crash in San Francisco.
Mm-hmm.
Too dependent on the automation. The automation wasn't doing what they were expecting it to. Well, when it wasn't doing what they were expecting it to do, they didn't really realize in time to click the automation off and know how to fly the airplane themselves. So, that's what I'm getting at, Nick. It's not a matter of...
I think we're all saying the same thing, basically. Yeah.
Just a matter of interest, MAC is the Interstate Aviation Committee. I guess MAK is the Russian words for that.
Okay, thank you very much for that. I know that the agency that seems to do the investigations is it starts with an R, like Rora stuff.
Yeah.
Excellent Russian pronunciation.
Sorry for my Russian accent.
Yeah, good job.
Yeah, I need to work on that. Sorry. All right. Well, let's move on to another crash. This one in the Grand Canyon of the United States. A tour helicopter carrying 7 people on board crashed in the Grand Canyon, killing 3 people and injuring 4 others. 6 passengers and a pilot were on board the Papillon Grand Canyon helicopter's chopper when it crashed around 5:20 p.m. Saturday on the Wallapai. Thank you.
Yep.
Ooh, you knew that one. Awesome.
I do.
Near Quartermaster Canyon, Hualapai Nation Police Chief Francis Bradley said. The 4 who were injured were level 1 trauma patients and were being treated at the scene. An after-hours phone call and email to Papillon. I'm saying that right? Papillon? That's a French word. It means butterfly, right?
Butterfly, yeah.
Were not immediately returned on Saturday. The company's website says it flies roughly 600,000 passengers a year on Grand Canyon and other tours. It also notes that it abides by flight safety rules and regulations that substantially exceed the regulations required by the Federal Aviation Administration. Anyway, they go on a little bit more talking about the company and their operations, etc. But this was a Eurocopter EC-130 helicopter that crashed here. And Nick, you have something to add to this, I believe.
Well, yeah. Acme Red put out a little warning to us because, of course, we fly to Vegas. And it said a helicopter belonging to Papillon crashed in the Grand Canyon. The NTSB and FAA are investigating. Until further information is received, as a precaution, we recommend staff do not use this tour operator. So I reckon our outfit has probably realized that this might be an issue, and until they're proved to be a safe operator, they're suggesting our crew stay away from them, which is very responsible of them.
Yeah.
They might be jumping the gun a bit, but probably better to be safe than sorry.
I'm surprised they had that so quickly out there to protect its employees. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm impressed.
Steph?
Nope. Sorry. I didn't really have anything to add there.
I thought you were saying something. I'm sorry.
I did. I was just agreeing, but
okay.
My audio is just terrible, I think.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Well, hang in there, Steph.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
It's going to improve. I just know it. I guess, having 194 down is just not enough for Dr. Steph.
No, it's not.
Wow.
Hardwired, Steph. Hardwired. They'll fix it.
Pretty soon I'm going to have a 125-foot cable across my house here, too. So.
Love it. You can stretch one to Dana's house, then it'll work.
Yes.
Several miles.
Exactly.
Yep. No problem.
Do they make 300-something mile long Ethernet?
Probably.
Yeah.
Like that,
Really expensive, though.
Okay. Fair enough.
It's only 10 cents a foot.
Let's move on to this. EASA issues an emergency, what does the A stand for? An EAD, Emergency Airworthiness Directive. There we go. Regarding A320neo and A321neo, A320 and A321neo engines, and withdraws ETOPS certification with immediate effect. And apparently, several of the engines made by International Aero Engines, I believe, the PW 1127, PW 1130, and PW 1133. I believe those are Pratt & Whitney's, but I think somewhere in here it said something about International Aero Engines.
I know. I'm looking here saying it says Pratt & Whitney.
Okay.
Pratt & Whitney.
Yeah. All right. Well, never mind then. Pratt & Whitney. The geared turbofans, I believe, is what these are. Because they're the new engine option engines for the A320 and 321. Those engines with high pressure compressor aft hub modification embodied from ESN P770450. Basically what's happened here is they've had several occurrences of engine in-flight shutdowns, and rejected takeoffs have been reported on certain Airbus A320neo family airplanes. While investigation is going on to determine the root cause, preliminary findings indicate that the affected engines, which have high pressure compressor aft hub modification, blah 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 blah, are more susceptible to these in-flight shutdowns. And it says, here's the bottom line: this condition, if not corrected, could lead to a dual engine in-flight shutdown. So that's not good.
Not good for ETOPS, no.
No, that's Captain Sully territory.
Exactly. Yeah, we don't want to do that one again.
Nope. It may not be a convenient puddle to jump into.
That's right. They reference here, this is again from the Aviation Herald, an incident on the 4th of February, just a few days ago. A Spirit Airlines A320-200 November registration November 902 November Kilo, performing Flight 711 from Las Vegas to Oakland, California, was climbing out of Las Vegas when the crew stopped the climb at flight level 200 due to right-hand engine. It was a Pratt & Whitney 1127G. Right-hand engine vibrations. They shut the engine down, returned the aircraft to Las Vegas for a safe landing on runway 26 right about 30 minutes after departure. Now, in this case, I don't believe it was a uncommanded in-flight shutdown. It sounds to me like the way this is worded that they actually shut down manually shut down the engine because of the high vibrations. But apparently, they're citing instances like this that were the reasoning behind issuing this emergency airworthiness directive. So, and it says, I guess the main restriction here is that if you're operating one of these airplanes that have the affected engines on both wings, there's a possibility for that dual engine shutdown. And I'm thinking, well, wouldn't they all have this like matching engines on either side? Maybe it's just like certain engines in the production lot are a little bit different. I don't know.
I don't know. Makes sense to me that they would have the same engines, but maybe not.
Well, it appears to me that you can mix and match them because if you've only got one on your aircraft, you can continue to fly them. So yeah, it sounds to me like they can do as they wish, but one on one side, one on the other, different one on the other.
Well, I'm reading through this, and it says, I remember seeing it's like a serial number, and if you look at the top of the article, it says here, the 1127, 1130, 1133 inches with the high pressure compressor aft hub modifications embodied from ESN P770450. So electronic serial number or something, I imagine it's a certain run of it. And I remember reading somewhere else about this, that it's only a certain run of the engine. It's not all of the engines.
And perhaps maybe some of these engines haven't gotten the modification, and when some have, and I guess the modification was not a good thing, apparently.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
So
yeah.
I remember reading it somewhere else. I don't remember where it was, but it's only a certain run of this air on this engine. And I remember also reading that this engine or a form of it is also in the C series. Not the exact, but this type of the dual shaft engine, or was it? What's
geared turbofan?
Geared turbofan. That's the type of engine that they're putting into the C series, and I remember that being mentioned as well. So
okay. Well, I hope they get this all straightened out and they don't have any further uncommanded in-flight shutdowns. That
sounds
unwelcome.
nasty.
Yeah. Well, moving on to more pleasant news. Well, I'm not sure if it's more pleasant or not, but
it's of a different nature anyway.
Yep.
From local affiliate KTLA in Los Angeles, a man who police said set off a fire alarm at Los Angeles International Airport after he ran toward a plane just taking off on Saturday has been arrested, according to authorities. Now, I'm not sure if the journalist here really understands what taking off means, but let me continue here. No one was injured in the incident, according to LAX police, and the man did not make any threats and was not armed. Police said there appears to be no threat to the airport as a whole. While police initially said the man was on the plane, officials later clarified that he had actually run toward the plane after jumping an airport fence. An alarm went off after he pulled a fire extinguisher from an area on the exterior of the plane.
On the exterior of the plane?
Yeah,
Where
so
do you
apparently
keep
we
the
have
fire extinguishers?
hanging
On the exterior of your plane.
Yeah.
Hey, is that for something on the exterior of the plane is on fire? So in flight you can climb out and just grab
It's
that
very
fire
handy.
extinguisher and.
Yeah, well, it gets better, though, Steph. It gets
okay,
better.
wait, there's more.
There's
Continue.
more here. At around 7:48 p.m., a pilot on the plane had spotted a shadow that was coming across a grassy area.
Not the grassy knoll.
No, not the knoll. It's just a grassy area. Maybe a verge.
Oh,
perhaps?
okay. It could be a verge, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And up to the landing gear of the plane. Shortly thereafter, an alarm went off in the cockpit. What? Okay.
He told KTLA?
Yeah. Through a camera under the aircraft, the pilot saw a man pull a fire extinguisher in from the plane in the wheel well. He could also see the man going back to the gate area through the camera. What camera? This is a 737. They don't have cameras on the bottom of the airplane.
No, they don't.
An investigation soon found that the man had jumped over a fence along the perimeter of the airport, rushed toward the... Well, they already said that. He said the man appears to be under the influence of some drug or substance or may be mentally ill. And the same might be said of the person that wrote this article.
You know what I was thinking is that our success rate is about 50%, or try to be 50%. I think the news and the media is more like 10 to 15%.
We're doing a lot better than this particular
I think so.
news media outlet.
I'm feeling good about this, actually.
I know. We got this.
So when officers confronted him, the man, he told them that he was trying to get back down to Downey. Back to Downey.
What, on a fire extinguisher?
I don't know. The plane involved in the incident was sent back to the airport. Apparently, it somehow got away from the airport. It was sent back to the airport to have K9 units sweep through it. The flight was just leaving its terminal when the incident happened, even though the first paragraph said it was on takeoff. After the incident, it was powered down and brought back to the gate where it was departing. So this is really, really well written. Yeah. No flights were delayed except the one involved, and Southwest is the only airline affected.
Clearly, because every airplane on that airline has cameras on it. So
and fire extinguishers that are mounted on the outside.
But they do because today's Valentine's Day. They do have a big heart on the bottom of the airplane.
There you go. That makes it all.
That is factual, folks. That's the truth. That we know. Okay. This is such hogwash. It's not even funny.
Yeah.
The guy ran out of the terminal, clearly. Beyond that, I don't believe anything.
Yeah. Well, it said a couple places that he jumped a perimeter fence.
Mm-hmm.
But he was just
ran out of the terminal somehow.
Yeah, well, but he's trying to get back to Downey. I mean, it all makes sense.
Over the river, through the woods, over a perimeter fence,
back
through
to
a
Downey
terminal.
we go.
Back to
Did
Downey
they
we go.
walk both ways uphill in 2 feet of snow to school all their life too?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Sure.
I'm still trying to work out what alarm went off in the cockpit.
Yeah,
Was
what
it
alarm goes off?
The external fire extinguisher has fallen off alarm, or what?
It's the intruder on the exterior of your aircraft alert. It's like the airplane security system. Like their own security
In all
system.
fairness, I don't know the 737, folks. In all fairness, like on our airplane, there is an external fire extinguishing system on the aircraft. So maybe that's what not in defense of this journalist who apparently doesn't know what in the world that Blighty talking about.
Extinguisher from
Yes,
the
you
wheel
can.
well.
You can't pull it out, but you certainly could pull and activate the extinguishing system
For the APU, there's an exterior handle.
I think that's way too advanced for this reporter to ever have grasped that. So, but I was just saying on the outskirts of reality here, which is what this really is.
Okay. Well, Nico in the chat room says it could be the EFE HFO alarm. I'm not sure exactly what that is. But...
Or the hi-ho, off to jail we go. Hi-ho,
Well, he
hi-ho.
does fly the. Does he? I forget, Nico. Do you fly the 7.3? I think he does.
Oh, he might. We might have an expert in the chat room. Maybe he can straighten this out for us. Anyway, yeah, who knows exactly what it was that this person was doing and what kind of fire extinguishing system he was.
At any rate, they were up to no good.
Up to no good. Oh, that means
This paper said
bad boy.
Jeff when we need him.
Yeah,
I agree.
I should have played this. Darn it.
Don't worry, Jeff. It's only 311 shows. You'll get the hang of it in the end.
I'm shooting for perfection at some point.
Excellent.
Got a long way to go, though.
Nico did clarify. He says it was the external fire extinguisher has fallen off alarm.
Oh, there we go.
Yes.
Very good.
Thank you.
Sending us above the 50% mark. Thank you, sir.
That's right.
All right, that's enough of that. Did you hear about your London City Airport, Nick, being closed?
Well, actually, not until I read this. I went, oh really?
Yeah, I think it was on Monday.
Yeah, this was at least in the news. Pretty.
Mhm.
I heard
well,
about it.
I've got a cold.
I know.
Oh,
I don't
well,
know
then
what
that's
that's
why you
going to
did
do
it.
with anything, but perhaps it stops me from watching the news.
That was not in the news.
Oh,
Nick's got a cold.
Yeah, I know. It should have. That should have been headlining.
So you wanna take this one on, Steph? Tell us why the London City Airport was closed.
Sure, I can do that. This is a article from the independent.co.uk, and it says London City Airport closed. All flights canceled after unexploded Second World War bomb discovered. So 16,000 passengers booked to fly in and out of London City Airport on the busiest day of the week had their flights canceled as a Second World War bomb is made safe. The airport adjoins George V dock, as I say that normally.
Or George V.
George V.
George
like,
the
is it
Fifth,
George the Fifth or just George V? Anyway.
And it's not George the Fifth Duck. No, it's
Duck.
right,
It's the
right.
duck.
George V's duck.
Duck.
Yeah.
Where
No, duck.
Okay. So anyway, there was a unexploded bomb found early on Sunday morning during work to expand the Docklands hub. So the Metropolitan Police said specialist officers and the Royal Navy have attended and confirmed the nature of the device. At 10 p.m. on Sunday, a 214-meter exclusion zone was imposed to ensure that the ordnance can be safely dealt with whilst limiting any risk to the public. So some residents were evacuated, roads were closed, and apparently this also closed the airport for safety purposes. So, but I believe they've since dealt with the ordinance, and they've basically gotten rid of it, and the area is safe, and the airport is back up and running, as far as I understand, without going through this whole lengthy article.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was a 500 kilogram bomb, so that's like 1,200 pound bomb. That's pretty big old bomb. Now, funny enough, my next door neighbor, he's since moved because he got posted, was a Royal Naval bomb disposal officer in one of his jobs. And that, I can promise you, having chatted to him about it, is one damn dangerous job, because not only are you going down into almost impossible diving conditions, you're dealing with World War II, and almost exclusively these old weapons from World War II are very unstable. And then you've got they usually like to let them off where they are. But obviously, if it was too close to the airport or buildings, they had to move the damn thing, which would not have been a nice job.
No, I was very impressed with the fact that they moved it. They got the thing out of the water and took it out to sea.
It was in a bed of silts, 15 meters underwater.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, that would not have been a pleasant job.
No, it seems like a very dangerous job to me.
Absolutely. Because, the shockwave and water, if one of these things go on, if the immediate explosion doesn't kill you, the shockwave can, do really nasty things to you.
No, Micah in the chat room asks a very, very pertinent question. Does London City Airport have an ordnance?
Very good. Ha, ha, ha.
Bam.
But there
Good
are an
job.
amazing number of unexploded bombs discovered all the time in the UK, particularly around London, where so many were dropped.
Well, yeah, but we now know why the Germans lost the war.
Well,
Half the
bombs
stuff
didn't
they're
go
dropping,
off.
yeah, half the bombs they dropped didn't go off.
That might be part of it. It's a very small part of it. Okay. And then finally,
wow.
Do we really want to talk any more about London City Airport? I guess it inconvenienced about 16,000 passengers on Monday, but they got it up and running, I think, sometime yesterday, Tuesday.
One of the more surprising things to me was just reading through some of the tweets about this.
Uh-huh.
There's a lot of people out there who clearly speak English as their native language who don't know what the word ordnance means in terms of referring to bombs or explosives. So that was kind of funny.
Yeah.
It was just funny. There were a lot of people going, "What does that mean? I don't know what this means. Why is it? Couldn't you just say bomb?" No.
Thinking of that,
Yeah.
I know it's kind of going off on a tangent here, but you know those commercials on TV where you hear about the drugs that are supposedly helping you for whatever ailment you have, and then they have the what is the caveats, the what do they call that when they talk about the symptoms? The disclaimer. Thank you. And they talk about when something has happened, and they used to say when so and so have occurred or has occurred, but now they say happens. And I'm thinking, is it because now the people, their English is so poor that they don't understand what the word occur means? I think it might. I think it really just strikes me every time I hear one of those commercials. I'm thinking it doesn't even flow right. They just say, that it has happened instead of occurred. Anyway, I'm sorry.
It occurs to me that occurred might have gone out of fashion.
Apparently so. Yeah, it's maybe not part of the vocabulary.
Yes.
Is that what the hillbillies say?
Language is just changing all the time because of happy little mistakes like that, where you mispronounce words and forget words and change the structure.
Yeah, I mean, when we came over here, we tried to get everybody to speak properly, and I'll tell you what, nobody can speak the proper language over here.
Nobody can speak good no more.
No more. They got to park their car. It's just. It's a sad state of affairs, especially when you get different dialects and you lose a lot of meaning in words, and people have become increasingly. We keep on talking about technology. How often are you sitting there and you're typing, and you can't remember how to spell a word, but yet it comes up on spell checker, or even on your phone, and or how frustrating is it sometimes when you start typing something, it puts the wrong word, and then you send that via text. Mm-hmm. So we're becoming so technology dependent. Again, kind of the same tune, but it's even translating into the words we use and how we speak now.
Yeah, the world's just going to hell.
I know. We don't even have we don't even teach cursive anymore.
I think in fact, I'm so upset about that. I'm just going to stop the show right now.
That's it.
No, I'm just kidding.
It's all over.
That's it. One more news item, and then we'll move on to the feedback. I was showing up for my trip on Monday, and the gate agent was saying something about, something about Southwest canceling all their flights yesterday for no de-icing fluid. And I went, huh? I didn't hear about that on the news, and then saw this in one of the news sources. Southwest Airlines canceled 250 flights at Midway International Airport in Chicago on February 11th, which was Sunday, due to a shortage of de-icing fluid. It was the third time in 2 months that de-icing problems complicated its Chicago operations. The carrier now says it has secured additional de-icing fluid vendors to curb the shortages. Well, who knew that they would need fluid up there in Chicago? I mean,
it never snows. There's never inclement weather. It's never cold or icy.
Yeah,
it's like a tropical paradise.
Apparently, they were having some problems with one of the glycol holding storage tanks or something like that. A valve was not working properly, and I don't know. And apparently, they're getting a lot more snow and wintry conditions than normal, and it just caught up with them. And
I just get a hose and siphon it out, but don't forget to spit if you get something in your mouth,
because that stuff's nasty.
Yeah.
Anyway, well, we don't want to pounce on them too badly. I mean, I think every airline has probably had one of these kind of instances. I know that we did, Acme, several years ago at St. Louis. The station manager didn't order enough, and it was like pretty late in the year, like mid-March or something. And I'm not sure if he just neglected to, or maybe he was just thinking, I'm going to gamble and not order any more de-icing fluid because, we're probably not going to need it. Well, they needed it, and they had to shut down all the flights one day, which caused a huge disruption in our schedule. But, so it does happen. So, all right. With that, I think it's time for us to move on to the best part of the show, which, of course, is your feedback.
Captain, incoming message.
Alrighty, let's start with this one. Steve Horn Captain Steve sent this in. He said, this could have been bad. Note the English as second language confusion with the Cathay first officer. So he sent a link to a YouTube video, and this occurred at the Hong Kong airport. And what's the name of the new airport, Captain Nick?
Jet Black Cock.
Okay.
CLK.
I'm sorry. We were talking about the airport, Nick. What did you just say?
What?
Jet Black Cock.
Okay.
CLK. Yeah, I can see why you're amused, Dana.
Well, I mean, really? It's a family show.
So anyway.
It's Chinese.
From VAS Aviation, VAS Aviation, a YouTube channel that you should subscribe to because it's got some interesting stuff on there. A Hong Kong Airlines Airbus A330-343 performing flight 709 from Hong Kong to Denpasar. I don't know where that is. And then a Cathay Pacific Boeing 747-800 freighter performing flight 71 from Anchorage to Hong Kong. Had a conflict when the Airbus 330 was cleared for takeoff while the 747 was still crossing the runway on the far end of the runway, the departure end. And let's play a little bit of... Yeah?
Denpasar is in Indonesia for anyone who's dying to know.
Denpasar. Thank you. Indonesia. Thank you, Steph.
Bali,
and
to be exact.
Bali. Ooh. Bali high.
Cathay 071, hold at Juliet 11 holding point. Hold at Juliet 11, Cathay 0. Cathay 071, Juliet 11, cross from 07 right. Here's across 7 right at Juliet 11, Cathay 071. Bohemia 709, wind variable 5 knots, runway 07 right, clear for takeoff.
Okay, so they just gave crossing clearance. Now, some of this has been compressed a bit to the Cathay Pacific freighter at the far end of the runway. And then it wasn't long thereafter that he clears the this airplane for takeoff on that runway.
Runway 07 right, clear for takeoff, Bohemia 709. Cathay 071 is clear runway. Is across the runway. I say again, Cathay 071 is clear the runway.
We are not clear of the runway. We're on the runway. Cathay 071 is on the runway crossing.
Bohemia 709, stop immediately.
Yeah, stopping. Beam Juliet 2, stopping. Beam 709.
Cathay 071, contact ground 122.55.
12255, Cathay 071.
Bohemia 709, are you still able to depart?
Bohemia 709, we're actually past Juliet 2 now. We can calculate speeds for Juliet 2. Any chance of going Juliet 3 for Juliet 2 again to depart?
Bohemia 709, approved, and vacate Juliet 3 and turn left on Juliet.
So this is an instance of somebody listening to what was happening and instructions given to other aircraft while on frequency. And I'm guessing that the first voice that we hear from the Cathay Pacific was the first officer, and maybe English is not his native language. And then the second voice that we heard from the Cathay Pacific, it sounded to me like an American English accent. And I'm assuming that was the captain because he wanted to clarify that, no, they were not clear of the runway. They were actually crossing the runway. They were still on the runway. And, hey, you just cleared this other airplane for takeoff on the same runway. And that's when the tower controller finally went, ooh, okay. Bohemia, what's the name of the other airline? It starts with a B. Anyway, told them to stop their takeoff roll, and apparently they had just started to roll, so it was a low speed regime, kind of an abort situation. But it was a heads up, listening on frequency, which is important.
Yeah, that was good. The first officer obviously picked up the problem, but in the stress of the moment, trying to get an urgent call out, used the wrong word. So he said, I've already forgotten what he said.
He said clearing. He said clearing first, and then
Yeah.
he said crossing, and then he went back to clearing. And I think you're right. It was just like I can't believe you cleared
this
an
is
airplane
happening.
for takeoff.
Yeah, I reckon the captain was an Aussie myself.
Oh,
but,
really? Okay.
Yeah, he obviously piped up when he. I mean, to be absolutely fair, there's not a huge amount of danger. It's right at the other end of the runway. It's a pretty long runway, and 99 times out of 100, that 330 is going to be airborne well before they reach. But that's not the point. The point is you had a potential conflict. If the 330 had tried to stop and needed all that runway, or he had been very heavyweight and struggled to get off, then or lost an engine, then there could have been an absolute disaster. But just goes to show. The only good thing that comes out of this, I think, is the controller's actions. Once he realised there had been the cock up, he was very quick to get everything organised. He didn't kind of lose the plot, as a lot of people might have done when they just realised that they have had a major boo-boo. He sort of kept his pup in a pile, I thought, and kept things well organized. But of course, his mistake in the first place for clearing that aircraft to take off when the runway wasn't safe.
It's very important to keep your poop in a pile.
Absolutely.
It's our motto around here, I think.
Got to keep it very neat and tidy.
Yes. Good points. Good points. And yeah, good heads up by the Cathay Pacific pilots, and also good controlling. Even though the controller made the mistake to begin with, it was he recovered very well, I think.
Yeah, I have to say, having been out there many, many times, the Hong Kong Chinese are very good controllers. They're very good at procedural stuff, and they're very good at everyday stuff. They're not brilliant at thinking outside the box, but and when the pressure's on, like most people, they do have a few problems. But generally speaking, it's in that area one of the best airports you can fly into for air traffic.
Excellent. Moving on to this next item, Kevin sent to us. CBC News, pilotless planes are coming, but will passengers accept them? And we'll include the link in the show notes so you can read the entire article. He says, Captain Jeff, assume I'll be one of the numerous APG listeners that will forward this article to you. However, that won't stop me. I do have a question on Category 3 auto landings. When does the captain take control of engine power and braking after touchdown? In closing, I'll offer the traditional closing of blue skies and appropriate winds. Respectfully, Kevin St. John. And he says, P.S. I'm not flying on anything that doesn't have a human overseeing the automation from the cockpit. I'm with you, man.
Yep. Me too.
Let's see. So the question he has for us, the Category 3 auto landings, I guess it depends on the airplane that you're flying and perhaps the company's standard operating procedures. But on every airplane that I've flown with the Category 3 auto landing capability, well, I guess it depends on the individual captain too. There's no set point at which you have to. Well, let me back up. There is a point where
I was about to say 5 seconds after touchdown.
There is a point where it will just kind of relinquish all the automation and relinquish control of the airplane to the captain, but that does not preclude the captain from taking over once the aircraft has touched down on the runway. So it's kind of a combination of all that, and it's really hard to describe unless you've actually sat through a real auto land. And basically what you're doing is when the airplane is flying it, you're following through on all the controls, and so you kind of feel almost like you're actually flying the airplane, even though the controls are being manipulated by the autoflight system. But once the airplane is on the ground and the nose wheel is coming down and you're putting the engines in reverse thrust and you're feeling the auto brake system come on, and the airplane's starting to decelerate and all the things are happening all in a very quick pace, then it's just kind of like you just feel when it's the right time to disconnect things and take control of the airplane and continue through with the entire landing. But as Dana just mentioned, on the airplane that we fly specifically, after 5 seconds after touchdown, we'll spin up the airplane. Basically says, you have the airplane. I mean, it doesn't say that, but basically that's what's happening. Yes? Anybody else?
Right.
Well, on the Airbus, it'll ask you to retard the throttles, and if you don't do it, it'll eventually do it on its own anyway. Obviously, if you've left the throttles in the climb detemp, which is the position they're in when they're the auto thrust is engaged, that you can't get at the the reversers. So you eventually gonna have to pull the levers back anyway, because otherwise you can't reach forward and grab the reversers. So, but the airplane will do it itself. But our cue is when it asks you to, you retard the throttles. It's normally around 20 feet for us.
And so that's during an auto land?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, it happens on every landing.
Right.
If you've got the auto thrust engaged, but
Mhm.
on the auto land, because you're not hand flying the airplane, you tend to wait. At least I tend to wait for the cue before I close the throttle because it doesn't. The auto land doesn't quite fly the airplane the same way I do.
No.
And it could, so sometimes if I'm a little hot, I might close the throttles a little earlier just to get rid of a few knots, and vice versa. If I'm a bit slow, the auto land tends to be much more accurate.
On our airplane, we going through 50 feet, it enters the flare mode, and basically not long thereafter starts retarding the throttles, and you're just supposed to let it do it and assume it's going to touch down at the right speed and the right place and that kind of thing. And it does a pretty good job, actually. Dana, you probably sat through a few.
Well,
okay.
Yep. Yeah, no, I had to got a little choked up there. I'm only kidding.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, the just recently, I didn't mention it. I think it was 3 or 4 weeks ago when we did a show, and we were talking about things that normally what we do at the Bean show. I didn't talk about this one, or maybe I did. I can't remember. But so, anyways, we're coming in on what was going to be a no kidding Cat 3 landing, with bad weather in Atlanta. And fortunately for us, it didn't turn out that way. It turned out to be about Cat 2-ish. Well, the airplane was coming down for its auto land. And when we got to the 50-foot mark, it did the retard flare, which is what it's supposed to do, and starts flaring the airplane. Well, the airplane started trimming and trimming and trimming. And it just started, it got down to about 20 feet and just stayed there. And next thing you know, it's starting to fly away from the runway. It's supposed to be an auto land.
That's an unsatisfactory auto land.
Very unsatisfactory, because shortly thereafter, you know what happened? The autopilot kicked off and said, I'm done. At 20 feet, decelerating in IMC. It's supposed to be an auto land where you're not supposed to see anything. All right. So now, thank God we recognized it real quick. I said, Captain, you throws the airplane's starting to pitch up. He was outside, of course. So he's looking, and I was watching inside.
He was outside. What is he looking for that fire extinguisher?
He was
I was going to say there was something on fire.
He was looking for the
This was a
person
terrible
running.
flight.
Well, the alarm went off.
Oh yeah.
Must be it.
Yes. So he's looking outside for the visual cues for the landing, and I'm inside watching all the instruments. And I said, Captain, we're climbing away from the runway. And he said, yeah, I see that. And next thing you know, the autopilot kicked off. Unfortunately, he grabbed it and was able to put it down, but it was not very surprised we didn't drive the mains through the wings. It was a very hard landing.
Out of options and airspeed, right? Or airspeed and
we
options.
were there. I mean, that was it. Even if you brought the engines up to full power, we had the 2 or 3 second lag. We were going to hit.
Yeah.
So we were very lucky in that one. But that taught me a very valuable lesson. Don't always trust and be on top of it 100% of the time, because I've always thought that this was a very reliable system, and in that case, it proved to me. If we were actually Cat 3 RVR,
you would have had to go around.
We were too slow and too low, man. We would have contacted the runway no matter what. If we didn't stall first.
Yeah, but we'd just like playing the song, Dana.
Yeah, I know. But that was, all kidding aside, that was very serious. It was a serious situation. So we put a nice, tidy write-up in the logbook about that one. I think they obviously took the auto land capability of that aircraft away.
Right. All right. Very, very interesting. Thank you for the input on that, Dana. And I hope that we answered Kevin's question about when the captain takes control of engine power and braking after touchdown. Jordan writes in. He says, this sounds like a crappy situation. Thought this might be a good addition for the news segment. No, Jordan, it's a good addition for the feedbacks segment. He sends a link to a bbc.co.uk article. A flight with 85 plumbers on board turns back due to
All my relatives? Oh, wait.
Your
different types of
Oh, no.
different type of
Oh,
plumbers.
yeah. I didn't even think of that when I saw plumber. Of course, you
Yeah,
do.
nice one.
That's your last name.
It was a family gathering.
It was.
Maybe that's why they couldn't fix the loo. Because they weren't actual plumbers. No, they were actually plumbers. The article says, how many plumbers does it take to fix the toilets on a Norwegian Airlines flight? Ba-doom, bam. The answer, it would seem, is more than the 85 who were flying from Oslo to Munich. And 20 minutes after takeoff, the aircraft was forced to return to the tarmac after a fault with the toilets was discovered. And because the problem had to be fixed from the outside, there was little the plumbers on board could do to help. And I dare say, even if they could fix it from the inside, they probably, unless they were aviation mechanics, they probably wouldn't know how to fix it either. So, anywho, we'll put a link to this tweet in the show notes. But, I think the best part of this was toward the end here, somebody I'll never forget spending 2 hours on the tarmac, he wrote, then hearing someone scream, "We'll just use a bucket," when they came on the loudspeaker to announce it would be another 45 minutes. But unfortunately, that is not an option. All right. Ivor.
So can I ask the obvious? Where did they
Yes.
go when they were waiting for it to be fixed?
To the toilet?
Yeah.
Yep. I'm sure.
Where did they go? I mean, if they were stuck on an airplane, where did they go to the bathroom?
Oh, well, I think they got off the air. They were only 20 minutes out, so they weren't on the airplane. They weren't stuck on the airplane for very long. So
Okay.
it wasn't an issue in this case. Ivor, who I believe is with us, he was earlier in the chat room with us as we're recording this live, sent this in to us a while back. He goes, okay, here we go. Are you guys holding out on us? Spray Can Nielsen, Dirty Sky Anderson, not forgetting Blue Juice Dana. As ever, the good doctor comes out of this with a clean bill of health/blame. Does this provide the answers we demand? And then he has a link to an article, Chemtrail Conspiracy Theorists, the people who think governments control the weather, from BBC News. And we'll put the link to this in the show notes as always. But the article starts by saying, those white lines in the sky trailing behind jet planes are puffy plumes. Well, that's hard for me to say. They are puffy plumes of water vapor. But online, some have twisted them into evidence of a secret plot to control weather or poison the environment. Why are wild theories about contrails and other phenomena so persistent on social media? Because the masses are asses. Susan Mayer doesn't like the term conspiracy theory. She says, when I use it on a phone call to arrange an interview, she tells me that, the lady that wrote this article, I guess. She tells me that it was invented by the CIA to discredit those who question the government. Huh? But as the founder of Bye Bye Blue Sky, a group established to raise awareness of so-called chemtrails and what she claims is a massive secret government conspiracy to control the weather, it's one the Canadian is used to hearing. I ask that we move beyond the notion that this is a conspiracy theory, she says. 20 to 30 years ago, we never saw these trails. We had a beautiful blue sky. Well, that is not true. I think at some point here in the article, they said that you can look at some photos from World War II where you can clearly see contrails coming from the backs of these World War II aircraft. So it's not something that was just invented to spew toxic chemicals in the sky. as some people believe. Anything to add, folks?
There's a professor, David Keith of Harvard University, is amongst the most prominent scientists calling for further research.
Okay.
You have professors at Harvard that support this, or am I reading that wrong?
No, I think you're reading that correctly.
Unbelievable.
There's a certain group of the population that just believes everything is conspiracy. I think that sometimes the people that come up with these government conspiracy theories give the government way too much benefit of the doubt that they can actually figure out how to do something like that.
Well, all I can say is that the mind-altering chemicals that they're putting in these chemtrails aren't working very well. If they're not getting to these people, or perhaps they never take off their tinfoil hats. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, the good news is a 2016 study by the Carnegie Institute for Science and the University of California, Irvine, surveyed 77 leading atmospheric scientists and geochemists. All but one, 98.7%, reported no evidence of a secret large-scale atmospheric spraying program. The one scientist who dissented recorded unusually high levels of atmospheric barium in a remote area with low levels of barium in the soil. But to get from that one result to the idea that we were being secretly sprayed with chemicals requires a monumental leap of faith. And then I'll add stupidity.
Yeah. This is absurd.
Yeah.
It just goes along with the world is flat people and the cults and Waco, Texas, and so forth and so on. It's almost a waste of our time.
Yep, it really is. So Ivor, thanks for wasting our time by sending that in.
No, that wasn't meant to towards Ivor.
We were just kidding.
HR, where are you, HR?
She's gone. She's not monitoring us. We can get away with murder right now.
I can see her on the phone in the corner, and she's just trying to get hold of security to escort Dana out of the building.
Uh-oh.
Wow. Really?
Yep. That's what she told me.
Don't be surprised if hotel security doesn't start knocking on your door. She had
I'll go back and eat my dinosaur barbecue then.
Okay. That's what you're munching on there, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
I missed it once.
So yes, Miss Stephanie had to take a work-related call, so she's not with us at the moment. We're going to push on without her, though. This is an interesting one, I think. I need to play this little clip here.
Dr. Steph just pulled her hair up.
Love is in the air, everywhere I look around.
Love is in the air,
every sight and every sound.
Virgin Atlantic says it will feature love suites on some of its New York-bound jets that are designed with couples in mind. It will have 3 love suites it's like the Love Boat, I guess, love suites in some Airbus A330-200 planes that are joining the fleet in March, along with other special seating arrangements. The love suites are ideal for dual dining, watching movies together, or catching up on, quote, work, according to the airline. The seats are located in the center of the cabin. Oh, great. The revamped upper-class seating arrangements include Freedom Suites and extra private corner suites in the jet's upper cabin. All 3 private corner suites will include free Wi-Fi messaging and barista-style coffee menu. The planes will come with names such as Strawberry Fields, Honky Tonk Woman, Scarlett O'Hara, and Daydream Believer. All 19 of the upper-class seats turn into beds. Virgin Atlantic's 330s, which were purchased from another airline, are being reconfigured and will initially serve flights from Manchester, England to New York City, Boston, San Francisco, and Barbados.
Well, there you go. I saw a picture of the cabin. It's not the usual upper-class suites, but the chairs are like fore and aft, and the middle 2 are snug together. And I'm guessing that the little partition that goes between them can be removed. So literally, you're just like you would be in sort of a premium seat, sitting beside the one you like, with the barrier removed, but except you're in a nice big seat. So I guess, yeah, they're not going to make them particularly private, so I don't think you can get up to much. But there you go.
Not like some of those. Like which airline is it? Emirates that has the like the.
Oh yeah, the one that Steph was in, that was very
Yeah.
private. Yeah,
very cool.
she had 3 windows there though, so I
And she
guess
was by herself too, though. You know what?
Yeah, I know, that's a bit sad. Yeah, funny enough, I spotted Honky Tonk Woman on I don't know if we've got it a little bit later in the feedback, on a flight radar track, doing something special for. Are we going to that later?
No, we're not. But funny you should mention that. When I saw that, what you're referring, I thought to myself, I could play this again.
Love is in the air, everywhere I look around.
And if you looked around over the skies, well, if you watched one of the Flight Radar 24 or the like tracking sites, you would see that they leave a trail of their actual path. And what was the path that was left, Captain Nick?
Well, someone drew a very acceptable heart just north of Cornwall in the southwest of England, just over the up over the estuary there, the big estuary. So nice piece of clear airspace, nice big heart, and it turns out it was Honky Tonk Woman was the name of the aircraft, and the registration was GV. Now, who sung Honky Tonk Woman? It would have been. Oh, come on, help me.
Was it not Elvis Presley, was it? No.
No,
Who
it
sang
was
Honky Tonk?
Rolling Stones.
Oh, okay.
They sing out MIC, Mick, I think. GV Mick.
Mick Jagger.
So, yeah, for Mick Jagger.
Okay.
So that was a neat trick, I thought, on Valentine's Day.
That Virgin Atlantic, they're very clever.
They get everywhere. And have you seen the one that they've just rolled out of the paint shop at Manchester?
No.
That one, instead of having the usual Virgin Atlantic written on the side, it's got something like a big thank you from Virgin Atlantic, or it's got a big, it fills the whole fuselage, and it's got a special flying lady at the front instead of the usual one. This lady is there holding a glass of champagne up. So they've done a special job for this aircraft that's rejoined their fleet. Looks very good, very fancy. They say it's a big thank you to all their employees who work so hard to get the aircraft back on the line so quickly.
Very cool. Very cool. Love it. All right. Moving on to some audio feedback from, Lucas, the Flying Kiwi. And I'd promised this, I don't know, for a few episodes now, and we're actually going to play this now. And let's take a listen from the Flying Kiwi.
Hey, APG, this is the Flying Kiwi, Lucas Diamond, speaking to you from Wellington Airport, and I've just had the weirdest experience. An FO and a captain have just come off a flight. Looks like an international flight. Probably, not sure if it was certainly wouldn't have been a 777 into Wellington. I'm not sure what it would have been, maybe an A320. Anyway, the FO looked around about, now I'm not being ageist, but he looked around about sort of Captain Jeff Nick's age. But the captain, the four-striper, I'll tell you what, if he wasn't in uniform, I would have said he was 12. It was quite amusing. They were both chatting away, and it was almost like bring your kid to work day. So I thought it was rather interesting that the massive differences in age compared to seniority, which of course doesn't say anything about flying ability, but I thought it was interesting considering Nick used to be called the boy pilot. Well, I think I found his civil equivalent. Anyway, sorry to spam you with more feedback, but I thought that might be amusing. Anyway, fine, Kiwis out. Bye.
That would be kind of unusual to see. You normally expect to see the captain be the old gray-haired man of our age, Captain Nick. And
distinguished looking.
Distinguished, exactly. And the first officer to be the young, looking like they weren't old
Not
enough
so-
to shave. What's that?
Yeah, exactly right.
But in this case, it was reversed, and it was an interesting observation by Lucas.
Well, I'm wondering if it wasn't the case. It was the case in the UK a while back where you couldn't be a captain beyond the age of 60, but you could work up to 65 as a first officer. So a lot of our captains, who, particularly the ones who were in their third or fourth marriages, had decided they needed to keep earning. So they remustered, as it were, as a first officer. Dropped a stripe, climbed in the right-hand seat, and carried on working. And exactly that situation might have occurred. And I don't know if perhaps in New Zealand they have a similar rule. You can fly beyond a certain age as a first officer, but you couldn't continue in the captain's seat.
When I was flying first officer on the L-1011, international especially, I always was the youngest pilot in that cockpit because, well, first of all, we ended up getting some of the professional engineers from previous airlines that we had merged with. In other words, they were permanent flight engineers. They could not move to the right seat or the left seat because they didn't have pilots. Well, they may have been pilots, like private pilots or whatever, but they didn't have the appropriate certificates to operate the air carrier airliners. And so that was their career, flying as a flight engineer on a 3-pilot or 3 cockpit crew member airplane. But back before we changed the mandatory retirement age to 65, the retirement age was 60. And folks, as you mentioned, Nick, were in a situation where they were perhaps supporting several ex-wives, and they needed to have apparently some of the stories that I heard back in the 60s and 70s that these guys were flying in. My goodness, it's no wonder that some of these guys had multiple marriages. Anyway, so they were too old to fly, according to the FAA. As pilots, but they could fly as flight engineers. And you make a good point. Perhaps they have a rule where they can fly, further into their career as a first officer and not in command. But so usually the L-1011s that I'd fly to Hawaii, the oldest person up in the cockpit would be the guy sitting behind me, the flight engineer. The second oldest guy was the guy sitting over there in the captain's seat, usually in the mid-50s. And then me, I was about 39, 40 years old. I was the youngster. It was kind of cool. The flight attendants always, called me like a young pup, even though I didn't feel like a young pup.
Right. I've just found a picture of Virgin's GV nap. They've actually written a big Virgin Atlantic thank you all the way down the fuselage. So that's good.
I saw that.
Oh, she's back.
I'm back. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I just disappeared without telling anyone what was going on.
Well, we worked it out. We could see you in the corner of the picture on the telephone.
I'm so sorry.
We thought you were calling hotel security in Rochester.
I was, actually. So, there's going to be a knock on your door in a minute. Just kidding.
You warned him.
No, I apologize. That was work-related, sort of, and I'm sad I answered the call, but it was two phone calls in a row, and I ignored it the first time. So I thought maybe it was something serious, and it turned out not to be at all.
Oh.
So my apologies, but I'm back now.
No problem.
Oh, no, don't worry.
Welcome back.
Yeah. Where are we?
just before Steph came back, I was going to make an observation, and this is just in comparison to the way it used to be back in the 70s and 80s, maybe even the 60s. Yeah, most of the guys and girls that I fly with, quite amazingly, it's almost a flip of the coin from when you talk about 3, 4 ex-wives and the boat and the 4 houses and the three Maseratis sitting in the front yard. I fly with very few captains that have ever been divorced. Most of them have been in a very committed relationship for an extended amount of time. So it's almost like it's how the industry is now anyways. It used to be that we all used to go out and party all the time, have a good time, and do things. Now it's very straight-laced, and like very unusual tonight. We had our same flight attendants since this morning, all the way through the day. Yesterday we had the same flight attendants all the way through the overnight. Tonight we have our flight attendants. We're all on our own, not even socializing with each other. So it's some ways better, but in a lot of ways it's kind of boring and sad state of affairs. But it's everybody seems to be more committed nowadays than they were back in the 80s, for sure.
Well, it's a different world as well. You know,
Yeah.
With the onset of sexually transmitted diseases and that kind of thing. It's just
Didn't stop them in the 80s.
I don't know.
70s and
Perhaps it
80s.
didn't.
It's a little funny because I was actually having a very similar conversation with folks at my work about, you know, the same type of thing with older
doctors and nurses.
Older
That's
doctors.
That's a good game. I always like that game.
Yes.
Yeah. So, but it's not the case anymore. So, or
well,
rarely.
you guys are working for the wrong outfit.
Yeah. Well, tell us about that. What, expand upon that thought.
But
Captain
Acme
Nick.
Red, no, I couldn't. I might get into trouble. Their HR department's worse than APG.
Really?
HR.
And actually, I'm in contact with them. So
She's a monitor.
that's right.
I'm
Undercover.
worried now.
Well, I mean, it's true that a lot of international airlines, their laws and work rules are different. I mean, you can't get. I remember a specific conversation with I guess I can say it, Singapore Airlines. I was at a dive convention talking to the representative from Singapore, and I made comment on how they're known for such beautiful flight attendants, and he explained exactly the way and how they get their flight attendants. They make them sign a contract for 5 years. They pay for their training, and when they're up on the end of their contract for 5 years, they say, "See ya." And if you're lucky, you might get a renewal of one year, one more time on the contract, but certainly no more than 10 years. They had weight restrictions, height restrictions, and if you don't fit into the uniform that they provide within reason, then
that was a standard back for almost all the airlines back in the 60s and 70s.
But that's today. That is as of
I know. I'm saying that
years ago, yeah.
That's kind of an unusual thing. Most airlines aren't like that anymore. It used to be, being a cabin crew member, a flight attendant was not a career position, but now it is. So that's plays a big part in the way people behave now.
And I'm not saying that to be negative in any way towards our flight attendants, because in a lot of respects, I think if you have long-term employees, they feel far more invested in the product that we provide, and thus they provide better service.
Mm-hmm.
In my eyes, I mean, if you have somebody comes in and knows they're only going to be here for 5 years, well, they may be young, beautiful, and nice to look at, but what's their motivation to provide that excellent service through the whole entire time, other than it's a contract and they could get let go at any time?
Yeah.
I think that our employees, especially today, you know what happened. We get rewarded for excellent service, and there's loyalty that's built there.
Yep. True. All right. Sealview sent in this. Hello, Captain Jeff, Captain Nick, Captain Dana, Dr. Steph. Sealview here. Love the podcast, and about Dana's comment with fish urine that put our beloved podcast over the 50% accuracy. I love the old pilots' plain tales and really appreciate the work Captain Nick puts in doing them. I'm not sure if he did an episode about the North Carolina incident when a fuel leak led to losing a nuclear warhead that almost detonated. It's a Swiss cheese holes aligning kind of story, and I think would make for an interesting episode. And I think this must be your note, Captain Nick. You actually covered that in one of your plain tales?
That's right. Yeah, that was part of the Plain Tale on show 273 called The Buff. And it was the story of the B-52. And, of course, that was one of the B-52s that had that incident. And if you look about 1 hour and 46 minutes in, that's where you'll find it.
Excellent. So great minds think alike then, huh?
Absolutely.
As always, I do have to ask some questions, avocation related. Number one, what are the hardest decisions you've ever had to make as captains? And secondly,
tea or coffee?
Yeah, that's a tough one. Blonde or brunette? No, I'm just kidding. What factors influence?
We haven't lost that last topic yet, have we?
No.
Still just going to keep going with it.
No, I think the hair color you
HR
chose, Jeff, was
takes-
fine. Just go
Thank
for
you.
the silver look.
Silver is good, yes.
And then what factors influenced your decisions? I don't know. Who wants to go first with what are some of your hardest decisions you've made? Okay.
Well, I'm not a cat. I'm not a captain yet, so
let's pretend that you are.
Pretend that I am.
Yeah.
Well, I am gonna be a boat captain before I'm an airline captain. That's a good sign. So I
How
might have
about
to make
the
some
hardest decisions you've ever had to make as a first officer?
Well, honestly, it's to step on the captain's toes.
That is a tough thing to do.
That is a tough thing to do. I mean, for example, I remember a specific incident that I really completely disregarded the captain's command. And
are
fortunately,
you talking about when we flew together?
Yes, several times. That was every single command every one of them. No. Yeah, Jeff and I always violated everything. Not talking about the flight attendants, by the way.
And we're not talking about the 70s.
Yeah, we're not. No, okay. So seriously, coming at day 5 of a 5-day trip, 5 legs in the day, the last leg of that day, after a long day and dealing with weather, we were coming into Atlanta to land on 9 right, swinging around. The sun had set behind us, so we're going into the sun, swinging, and then away from the sun. So it was really dark in front of us and really bright, as the sun was setting. So we didn't have our display set properly, so we went from really bright to really dark. Swung around, and we're both exhausted, and we go through the landing checklist, do the landing checklist. And on the MD-88, you have a flaps 23 setting, which looks like the handle is in the flaps 28 setting, but it's not quite there. So we both went ahead and verified that we're, 28 land. All right. And so we both looked at it, didn't register at about 200 feet, which is when the warning comes on. Too low flaps. Captain immediately reaches over and said, I'm going to put that in flaps 28. I said, we're going around. He said, no, land the airplane. I said, too late. We're going. I had already pushed the power up, and I was pitching the airplane because I was pilot flying. And he was fuming mad, pissed off beyond belief, if I can use that term. He's like, what the hell are you doing? Going on. I said, shut up. We'll talk about it when we're on the ground. And so we went around, flew the pat, and he's sitting there fuming. We come back and land, and we taxi off the runway. He said, thank you. I said, well, you're really PO'd for a long time. He says, no, thank you. Because realistically, we would have been hit with we have a FOQA, which is a flight operations quality assurance. And they monitor those things. If we are not stabilized below 1,000 feet with flaps and landing configuration, landing gear down in close on speed, and then 500 feet, we have to be completely stabilized. They monitor that. Well, we were at 200 feet going to change our configuration. So that was a situation which I really overrode the captain. I said, go around. And he, the captain is trained that if the first officer calls go around, you go around, you talk about it, you figure it out, and figure out what happened. And he was adamant and insistent. And I think probably the fatigue and the long days, and after a 5-day trip on the 5th leg of the, and it was my last reserve trip I flew as a first officer. Thank God. Yeah, I get that to look forward to. So, anyways, that's one situation where I made a decision that.
Yeah, you made the right decision, though. I mean, that was the rule. And sometimes the reason why that was difficult is it would have been so easy just to move that flap handle just to the extra tiny little bit, and then everything is exactly where it's supposed to be, and you land and nobody knows the better, except that we have all these snitch systems now that will tattle on you that you made a configuration change that close to the ground. You did the right thing. You made the right decision. And true.
And did you see how I set that up, though? I set up with the Swiss cheese model. Mm-hmm. We had 5 legs on the last day of a 5-day trip. We're already tired, short, and didn't mention it was a short overnight. It was like 11-hour overnight. And then, we turned from going into the sun to away from the sun. Everything was, and even looking at the instruments, we hadn't adjust lights in the cockpit at all. So we weren't looking at the proper indications with the proper eyes, with tired eyes. And then the decision, with the last decision to make there was, fortunately, I made the right decision. Captain made the wrong decision, but fortunately, one of us made the right decision, and that's that answers the question. I mean, that's one time that I had to make a decision as a first officer, and overrode the captain. And if I had not been flying the airplane, he would have landed the airplane.
Yeah, I would argue that the decision as of making decisions like that as a first officer is much harder than when you're a captain, because you have the authority as the captain to make the decisions. You're expected to be the buck stops here. The final decision maker. So, bravo for not having co-pilotitis and just going along with what the captain wanted.
Absolutely.
No, there was one other one. Can I throw that one? It's real quick. Taking off out of DC, heading north on runway 1. FAA jump seater in our seat. Captain, him, and myself about to take off. Pilot right in front of us took off. The winds are out of the south at about 14, 15 miles an hour. And so they kept on pushing everybody to leave on runway 1 because they didn't want to switch the runway around. So we go ahead, and I catch her, said, well, say the winds again. And they said the winds again. And I looked at the captain, and I said, we're not taking off like that. And that was another one. He was about taxiing. He was taxiing the airplane on the runway. I said, no. It may have been more than steady. It's like 11 or 12 knots. I said, but that's right up our tail, Captain. That's beyond the limitations. So both he and the FAA didn't catch that.
Or maybe the FAA did and was seeing if you guys are going to go through it taking off with the out of limit situation.
Yeah, I stopped that one too.
Awesome.
Anyways, enough.
Well, hey, you're going to make a fine, Captain, sir.
Scared crapless.
No, the first officers will be. Anyway, just kidding.
They won't know any better that you knew.
That's true. How about in your line of work, Steph? I'm sure you have to make tough decisions as well, especially when you're dealing with people's health and well-being.
Yeah, there's a lot of times where you have to make difficult decisions. In my line of work, a lot of times it often comes down to the most difficult ones are where a patient has been sent to you with an expectation that you're going to do something for them, that they've been something's been advertised to them, and they think they're going to be a candidate for it, and have this wonder treatment, and it's going to solve their problem. And a lot of times that's not the case. Not that those are difficult decisions to make, because they're pretty cut and dry in my mind, but the more difficult thing is having to deal with those patients afterwards and figure out how to explain it in a way that it makes sense and why we're not going to do it. And sometimes people are angry about that because they've been given these expectations that are not met. And it's really all about having to go back and build that trust with people and lay the groundwork for, yes, I understand why, these were your expectations and why you were told this, but we really can't do that for this, that, or the other reason, or it should be the last thing we do because you haven't done all of this other stuff first. I'm just trying to think if there's any real big parallels to aviation there, but a lot of times it just comes down to knowing when you shouldn't do something, because sometimes it's easy enough to just say, yeah, we could do this procedure for you, that procedure, and just see if it helps. But if it's not the right thing, or if there's something else that needs to be done first, you can't let yourself give into those biases or expectations.
You could make the parallel, instead of patients, our customers, our passengers have certain expectations about things. They expect that we're going to be on time, and they expect that.
Yeah, I mean, some parallels might be things like weather delays, maintenance delays, where people don't understand what's going on behind the scenes and why you're making the decisions that you have to make to keep the operation safe, or where you're just, in my case, it's keeping the patient's best safety and best interests at hand. A lot of it comes down to risk-benefit analysis.
Yep.
And if, in my mind, the risks are greater than the potential benefits, we're not going to do something. So,
excellent. All right. Well, Captain Nick, do you want to throw anything in there regarding
I was
this?
just going to say that, funny enough, the difficult decisions you think would make in the air, like, shall I divert? Is it safe to get airborne? Do I need to carry that fuel or this fuel? For me, they're the easy ones because you just go for the safest option always, regardless, and you never fall foul. The hardest ones I find, like the one I just had to make about flying to Barbados with a bit of a stiff back, a sore back, and a cold that might be coming or might not. As it turned out, it came, but by that time I finished the flight. They're the ones like when you're down route and you haven't slept very well. And you've got a really long flight to go home, but there's no replacement crew down route. You are obliged to you do the flight, and if you say, look, I haven't had a good night's sleep, I can't fly. I need to put my head back on the pillow for another 10 hours or whatever. That's going to be a really tough one because the whole operation just grinds to a halt on account of the fact that one man hasn't slept particularly well. So they're the really tough ones, I find. And of course, the hardest one is to say, no, I'm not fit to fly. It's very easy to say, actually, yeah, I'll go ahead and we'll just do the trip anyway. And then you end up like that, crew that were both tired end of a long day. They were commuters. What was that?
Was that Colgan?
Yeah, the Colgan air disaster. And
actually, the anniversary of that just happened, didn't it? Because wasn't it
that's right.
January, February 2009, I think?
Yep, 2009.
And the guy mishandled a stall, which he may well not have done if he had been a bit more alert. So that for me, they're the toughest ones.
Yeah,
sure. They're the ones where the difficult decisions aren't things where there's a very cut and dry reason to do it, even though sometimes those are the bigger decisions to be made. You can look at it, like you said, reasons to divert or whatever that is. But it's more the soft personal calls where it may be something personally related to you that's not a hard and fast rule. And I just wanted to add real quickly at the end of this, one of the best pieces of advice that I ever heard was from an attending physician of mine. And she said, if I'm on the fence about doing something or not doing something, I go with the decision that I know I'm going to sleep well with later on that night. If I think through all of the potential outcomes of it, I want to be making sure that I'm making the decision where I'm not going to second guess that later on this evening, regardless of the outcome. So,
and what I find is interesting is that we're at the point of when you're fatigued and that tired and you're having problems making decisions about work, just basic decisions. How are you able to self-assess if you can't even make a decision on how you feel?
Yeah,
exactly.
See what I'm saying? If you're that tired, you're that fatigued, it's hard to make that decision. You have that kind of the situation that Nick was in a different way. With us, we're getting done flying a 3-4 leg day, and the weather's garbage, and we're on our fourth leg for the day, and we're looking at extending into up to the 2-hour limit. And right now I feel okay, but I'm starting to feel fatigued. I'm not sure if I can handle it. It's been a rough day, but I want to get the job done because, well, you're the one man up. If you don't go, then everybody in the aircraft, 160 people, are inconvenienced. So that's a lot of pressure to be put on you, and then you have to try to make a decision when you're that tired and looking into the future whether you're going to be more tired. So there's been several situations where I couldn't make that decision, and I made the wrong decision. Well, I'm still here, so ultimately I made the right decision because talked it over with the captain and said, "Hey, I'm not in the position really to fly this airplane. Why don't you fly? If you feel okay, I can work the radios and we'll get the job done." But that's really not the right way to pursue it. But we are just so goal-oriented and mission-oriented.
Yeah.
I think sometimes we put ourselves in the wrong position.
Goal-oriented, mission-oriented, and we happen to, and it's not true for all pilots and whatever your field of endeavor is, are concerned about doing the best we can and providing the service that people have paid for. And so if you're somebody out there, and we all know them, Nick and and Dana and you too, Steph, and your
Mhm.
line of work, people that just have this attitude where I don't care if it's going to inconvenience somebody or whatever. It's easier for them to make those kind of decisions than it is for us who are thinking about those 240 passengers, Nick, that could have been stranded in Barbados and or never made it to the island. It's I kind of envy those people that don't really care.
Yeah, I do too. I do too.
Yeah, I've come across plenty of them in the industry.
Yeah, which is sad. But luckily, I think the majority of us really do have concerns about, providing the best we can for our customers.
Absolutely.
And it's about being a team. I mean, I'm sure what you were thinking about, Nick, when you were considering whether you were going to be able to do the Barbados was, well, what's the condition of my first officer? How is he feeling? I mean, if I start going downhill a little bit here, is he in a position that I feel comfortable that he can be there and support me in the role that I need to be supported in?
Yeah, actually, that was the first question I asked him.
Yep. So that's what Jeff's talking about. We're all customer service oriented, but we don't ever want to put ourselves in a compromising position. So we always take into consideration everybody around us and whether they can be there in a supporting role.
Yeah.
So.
Well, people that want to be in the position that we're in to make these hard decisions, these difficult decisions, well, they have to get hired, right? And many people listening to the show are, looking at putting their resumes in and going to interviews, job interviews, and whether you're trying to get a flying job or not. This one just happens to be, this piece of feedback just happens to be a typical pilot job interview. And apparently there was a hidden microphone in the interview room. And so we get a little glimpse of what a pilot job interview might just be like.
Have a seat. You seem very qualified in the air. I just have a few other questions I'd like to ask you.
Okay, sure. I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Great. I'd like you to speak into this microphone and read what's on this prompt.
Okay, sure.
Ladies and gentlemen, thanks again for flying with Up High Airlines. We're about an hour and a half from our destination with wonderful weather, showing on the scanner of about 75 degrees with 7 miles per hour winds. Thank you for flying Up High Airlines.
Great. I notice a sigh in there. How long can you sigh?
Oh.
A little below average, but you'll get the hang of it. Next question. You're a little off course, and you need to make a slight adjustment, but you know the passengers are going to notice. What do?
Blame it on turbulence and turn on the seatbelt sign.
Excellent. Can you demonstrate that for me?
Sure.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're just the seats are up and mirror tray tables. So, a little about turbulence. And we'll just make sure to turn seatbelts. Bing. Well, that's comfortable. Thank you for flying Up Airlines.
Superb. Now, it's been a while since you've said anything, and everyone's really into their movies.
Sorry for the interruption, everyone. We're having difficulties. Be careful with the flight attendants. We'll just make sure to take care.
Great.
Magazines and keep it in attendance. That's all.
Oh,
Thanks for
loving
flying
this.
up Airline.
Perfect. You completely passed this part of the test. I have one last question on a different note to test your problem-solving abilities. Let's say you have 120-mile-an-hour headwind and your co-pilot is unconscious, and you have dual engine failure. What do you do? What was that? Sorry, I'm not getting it.
Thank you for flying up Airlines.
You're hired.
You got to watch the video too, though, because it's funny to see the expressions on it, especially when he was doing that long
The
sigh.
sigh. Yeah, that's hilarious. It's so good.
Jeff, so you recorded your announcements?
Yeah. That's
Okay,
it.
cool. Yeah.
The weather is
Turbulence. Ding.
Turbulence. Seatbelt. Magazine. Anyway, that is not ATC memes, believe it or not. It was from an outfit called Studio C, and they do a bunch of comedic videos on YouTube. And a link, of course, in the show notes. You really do need to watch the video of them doing this. Very clever. Let's see. You know what? I think it might be a good time for us to play this week's installment of everybody's favorite, Plain Tales.
The old pilot's plain tales. All blood runs red. This is a great plain tale, and my thanks to Larry Gregory for guiding me to it. It was 1960, and the President of France, Charles de Gaulle, was on a state visit to the United States of America. Upon arrival, he asked to meet a very special American. When the name was mentioned, there were blank looks from the White House staff, but after a great deal of scrabbling around, the man was finally located. He was a 65-year-old elevator operator who lived in a rough part of Harlem, New York. With the address in hand, two senior French officers in full uniform tried to find the building. On arriving in the street, one of them asked a local where the corporal that they were looking for lived. The neighbor asked who the hell he was, dressed up like a toy soldier, and to slow his mouth down and try to speak right. Finally, they were shown up a dirty, graffiti-painted stairwell to a little apartment. They knocked, and a small, tidy-looking black man answered. Once he was identified, they snapped to attention, saluted, and handed him an embossed invitation written by the hand of the French president. It read, "General de Gaulle, President of the French Republic, and Madame de Gaulle request your presence at a reception on Tuesday, April the 26th, 1960, at 4:45 p.m. At the reception, the President and his wife spoke at length to this unknown, poor black man dressed in a worn uniform of the French Foreign Legion, and the conversation ended with a heartfelt embrace, after which de Gaulle named him a true French hero. Now, many of us know of the brave African Americans who flew with the Tuskegee Airmen during the Second World War, but not so many of us know that there was a much decorated black American fighter pilot who flew and fought in the previous World War. I commend this remarkable tale to you all. If you have never heard of the man, I wouldn't be surprised. Very few have. This is the story of Eugene Jacques Bullard. The story starts at the end of the Civil War, and with the Southern troops who were dragging themselves back home to Columbus, Georgia. A bedraggled soldier saw something move, and he picked up a pile of rags to find a black baby boy left by the side of the road. Not knowing what to do, he gave the child to a nearby white girl, the daughter of the well-to-do Bullard family. The family took the child in, educated him, gave him work and their family name. He grew to be a tall, clever, well-spoken man who married a beautiful Creek Indian girl, and from their marriage came 7 surviving children, the last of whom was Eugene. In a time when prejudice and mistreatment was commonplace, to comfort the children, their parents would tell them of the French origins of the Bullard family, whom they say came from an almost mythical land of unmatched liberty, fraternity, and equality. Eugene had only got as far as the 4th grade when a baying lynch mob drove his family from their home. At the age of 8, he ran and made it as far as a gypsy camp, who took him in. He was told to look after their animals, and over the years grew up to become a fine jockey, winning many races for them. They called him their little black sparrow. At the time, though, he put away his share of winnings in the hope of travelling to the wonderful country of freedom that he had heard about, France. After years of wandering, aged only 12, he stowed away on a German ship in Norfolk, Virginia, bound for Aberdeen in Scotland. Eugene's unconventional life continued as he moved from job to job, now a longshoreman, and then selling fish. Here, working in an amusement park, being paid to dodge balls people threw at him, and there spending time in a gym learning to box. A good fighter, he fought as a welterweight, winning bouts in England until he was finally offered a fight over the English Channel in Paris. The moment he set foot in France, he knew he belonged there. A quick learner who picked up languages easily, he was soon boxing all over Europe, learning French and German as he went along. French democracy, he said, convinced me that God really did create all men equal. In 1914, the country was plunged into war. Eugene had turned 19 years of age, and with his friends, joining up to fight, he tried to follow them. But being an American, he was sent to join his fellow expatriates in the French Foreign Legion. The training was notoriously tough, but Eugene was very fit and found it much easier than many. He was assigned to the Moroccan Division, 3rd Marching Regiment, which contained 54 different nationalities. Eugene Bullard and his comrades were sent to the Somme front, where 300,000 Frenchmen were lost by the end of November. Bullard and his fellow legionnaires did most of their fighting with the bayonet, assuming they weren't cut down by machine gun fire first. Because of German atrocities, the legionnaire officers ordered that no prisoners were to be taken, so the Germans retaliated by declaring that all captured legionnaires were to be shot. By May the 9th, 1915, they had lost so many men that their regiment was dissolved and combined into the 1st and 2nd Regiments. At the Battle of Artois Ridge, 4,000 men fought, but only 1,700 survived. Bullard's company lost some 80% of its strength, with only 54 of its 250 men left standing. Eugene survived battle after battle. During the Champagne offensive, 500 men from his unit began, but at the first evening's roll call, only 31 remained, a 94% casualty rate. With a bad head wound, Eugene fought on. In the Legion, he said, as long as you could walk or your trigger finger is not out of commission, you are good for service. He even survived the Battle of Verdun, where more than 250,000 died, with a further 400,000 missing, gassed, or wounded. Eugene became one of the wounded with severe leg damage, for which he was subsequently awarded the Croix de Guerre and the Médaille Militaire. His wounds were healing, but he was never going to be fit enough to serve with the infantry again. Instead, he was offered a chance to join the French Flying Corps. A wealthy American friend bet him $2,000 that he couldn't become a pilot. Perhaps bolstered by the challenge, he soon earned his wings from the aviation school in the city of Tours on May the 5th, 1917, and just as promptly collected his prize. Eugene Bullard had just become the very first black fighter pilot in history. He learned to fly the Caudron G3 and G4, and before long he was serving with the now famous Lafayette Escadrille Unit, the 93rd Aero Squadron, flying Newport and Spad 7s. Here, fighting a common enemy, he said, "I was treated with respect and friendship, even by those from America. Then I knew at last that there are good and bad white men, just as there are good and bad black men." Now a corporal, Eugene painted a red bleeding heart pierced by a knife on the fuselage of his Spad. Below the heart was the inscription, "Tu l'as sanki couli rouge." Roughly translated, it means, "All blood runs red." His first proper mission was in a Newport that he called a sweetheart to fly. It was September the 8th, 1917. He never missed a mission and claimed 2 kills. The first was never confirmed, since the aircraft, a Fokker, went down behind enemy lines, but afterwards his mechanics counted 78 bullet holes in his plane. His second kill was in November 1917, and there was no doubt about this one. He shot down a German Pfalz after the pilot went into a classic Immelmann turn in an attempt to come in from behind. Bullard ducked into a cloud bank and emerged below and to the right of his foe, from where he slid in behind and shot the German down. When the United States entered the war, Eugene Bullard tried to transfer to his country's Air Force. By that time, he had fought for over 3 years in the war and been wounded 4 times. He had spent 8 months in hospitals recovering from wounds, earned medals for valor, and was now a military pilot with confirmed kills. As an American, he was invited to transfer to the Air Service of the American Expeditionary Forces with the promise of being promoted. However, despite passing the physical, while other American pilots left to fight, Bullard's application was ignored for the remainder of the war. In October 1919, Eugene Bullard was discharged from the Armed Forces of France, a national hero of significant standing. He decided to remain in Paris and married a French countess, fathering 3 children, 1 boy and 2 girls. Sadly, the boy passed away soon after his birth. Eugene's marriage was not a success. After his wife inherited money, she wanted Eugene to retire so that he could join her socially full-time. But he loved people and the life he had built, so they eventually went their separate ways. By now, Eugene owned part of a nightclub and ran a popular athletic club. In the evenings, he could be found hosting the nightclub Le Grand Duc, where he entertained the likes of Ernest Hemingway, F. Scott Fitzgerald, Gloria Swanson, and English royalty such as the Prince of Wales. Soon after his marriage, he opened his own club, which fast became one of Paris's most famous entertainment spots for singers and musicians of the time. Eugene counted Josephine Baker, Langston Hughes, and Louis Armstrong amongst his friends. When World War II began in September 1939, Eugene agreed to a request from the French government to spy on German citizens who still frequented his nightclub. When the Germans invaded France, his club and Eugene himself became hugely popular with the occupying German officers. What they didn't know, however, was that he spoke fluent German and was working as a spy. The Germans arrogantly felt that no black man could possibly understand their language and spoke openly in front of him. Whilst doing this dangerous task, he even worked with the famous French spy, Cléopâtre Terrier. Eugene did more than just spy, and when a Free French group he was with came under attack, he was badly wounded. Rather than allowing him to be captured and interrogated by the Gestapo, his espionage partner, Kitty, was able to successfully doctor his wounds and smuggle him to Spain with his daughters. Later, he was medically evacuated to the United States. He recovered from his wounds in New York City, and, joined by his daughters, Eugene settled down to rebuild his life. He was thrilled to see America again, but the only work he could find was as an elevator operator in the Rockefeller Center. It was the job he would hold until he retired. Perhaps through disinterest or just lack of care, whilst he was alive, America never recognized nor even realized the legacy of the brave Corporal Eugene Bullard, who lived amongst them. However, France never forgot. In 1954, the French government requested his presence to help light the eternal flame of the tomb of the unknown French soldier at the Arc de Triomphe in Paris. Eugene, along with 2 Frenchmen, was given the honor of relighting the flame. Yet, when he returned to America, he received no recognition. France awarded Eugene 15 medals, which included the American Volunteer Medal, the Battle of Somme Medal, the Battle of Verdun Medal, the Medal for Military Wounded, the Combatant's Cross, the Military Medal, and he was made a Knight of the Legion of Honor, the highest honor the country can bestow. However, well after his death, on August 26, 1989, Governor Joe Harris signed a House of Representatives bill enshrining Eugene Jacques Bullard in the state of Georgia's Aviation Hall of Fame. In 1990, he was added to the Black Americans in Flight mural at the St. Louis International Airport. In October 1992, a memorial bust of Eugene was unveiled at the Smithsonian National Air and Space Museum. Finally, on August 23, 1994, 77 years after his application to fly for his own country was ignored, Bullard, the first black fighter pilot in the world, was posthumously commissioned to a second lieutenant in the United States Air Force. Eugene died in 1961, just a year after being embraced by the President of France at the age of 66, well before the nation of his birth was willing to acknowledge him. According to his wishes, the French War Veterans Federation buried him in his Foreign Legion uniform, with his Legion of Honor scroll in his right hand. The casket was solid brass and was covered in just one flag, the French tricolour. His pallbearers were all members of the Legion, and he was placed in the ground at Flushing Cemetery in New York with full military honors. Before his death, he tried to explain his feelings about both France and America. He said, "The United States is my mother, and I love my mother. But as far as France is concerned, she is like my mistress, and you love your mistress too, but in a different way."
Another masterful job of storytelling, and a true story, and I think we can learn a lot from the way this hero was treated.
That one gave me goosies.
Well, I hope it wasn't just my croaky voice, but you're right, Jeff, but it was a different period in American history, and I think you have to accept that. Things are very different now. And we've all learned a lot from that. But I just found the story of his life just fascinating. I mean, I couldn't include everything that has been written about him and everything he achieved, because it's just too much. And it's quite honestly, you're reading it going, this is amazing. How the devil did this bloke get all this done and get all this fitted into one life? It was just a bit sad the way it finished. He was quite ill. He was in a tiny and rather decrepit part of Harlem. And the people around him didn't really know much about him. The Americans didn't really understand what he'd done and how important he was to military aviation. But I think now he's well recognized, but still not a lot of people know the story.
No,
Hey,
I
Nick.
didn't know the story. So
I didn't either.
And let me tell you what you did. His memory and everything that he did, it's amazing the justice that you did and the job that you did on that story for him. It's going to educate a whole new cadre of generation, and I hope a lot of people hear that story.
Yeah, thanks. He did a lot, even in the war. I mean, just getting through 3 years of trench warfare in what were frontline shock troops, the Foreign Legion. I thought was just incredible. The odds, someone must have been smiling on that man. He was a Roman Catholic, by the way.
He was an amazing man and a hero in his own right, but what made it even more special, I think, was the fact that his own country didn't recognize any of his feats until after his death.
Yeah.
Yep, not for a long time, no.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you, Nick, for recording that, and Larry for the suggestion. And,
yeah, Larry, it was a great one. I really fell on that story, and thought, this is brilliant. This is just the kind of story I like doing.
Excellent. All right. Let's move on to some more feedback. Sim Captain Stone writes, "Hi, crew. It happened this January at Hawaii that there was a false missile warning. As I know it was on for more than half an hour. It was a real alert. Everyone got alerted on their phones, and it was everywhere. So they thought for half an hour that they will die. It must be a tough situation. That time there were airliners flying to or departing from Hawaii. I promptly recalled Jeff Felmuth's 911 letter. Also, or I should say 911 letter. Also, I read this in aviationstackexchange.com about an ATC guy and how he experienced this crisis. Veteran Honolulu Control Facility member Steve Olson recounting the experience of working that day. 8:07 a.m., I was plugged in working airplanes like I do every Saturday morning when the day took a turn into the surreal. Pilot after pilot started to check in with the same question. Center, can you confirm the missile launch? Then, as questions on the control floor were asked, it seemed like every phone in the room started ringing. The word confirmed stung like a knife in the gut as I started to advise the pilots on frequency that the missile launch is confirmed. The frequencies grew silent. As I did the only thing I could, continued to take care of the planes in my charge, all I could do was think about the ones I love, my loving wife, amazing kids. With less than 10 minutes, there was nothing I could do. We found out rather quickly that it was a false alarm. but it seemed like forever. With my heart racing and my stomach in my throat, this is what was in my mind. Every day, for the last 29 years, when I leave home for work, I hug Megan, kiss her, and tell her I love her. It may sound silly and trite, but today, for 10 long minutes, it mattered. Don't take anything or anyone for granted. And Sim Captain Stone continues, what do you think about this? Have you witnessed this kind of crisis in the air? It must be the pilot's discretion to divert in these cases, but what about the ones in the ground? Taking off immediately due to pilot's discretion? Cheers. Wow. Well, that is a good question. You're sitting there on the runway. You know that you've gotten the alert that North Korea has launched a missile heading for Hawaii. You have an airplane full of passengers, and you request a clearance for takeoff, but it's denied. What do? Do you take off anyway? Is that emergency authority?
This is back to those difficult decisions.
Yeah.
Right? I think this is one where there's that, the hypothetical there is if you were denied the clearance, but say it was just chaotic and no one knew what the right answer was should they let aircraft go? Should they keep them on the ground? There's no rule book for that, I don't think, or maybe there is, but I think it's such a unique and individual situation. It's one where everyone has to draw on their experiences to figure out the best course of action in a short period of time and then execute that as well as they can. So,
well, there was in the military, because we used to practice it regularly, and it was called a survival scramble. And at that stage in the build-up to a practice war, eventually the BMU's warning would go off as missiles were detected inbound, and all the alarms would go, and every pilot ran for an airplane. And regardless of how safe it was, obviously in practice peacetime, we didn't actually fly the aircraft that were unsafe, but in wartime, if the aircraft could fly in any form or manner, even if the undercarriage was stuck down or had no ejector seats and you were sitting on a soapbox, you go and get the aircraft airborne, and you just stay airborne as long as you could until you worked out where you could now land. Because obviously the missiles are coming inbound to the place you're standing. No point leaving the airplanes on the ground. So if it happened to me on an airport, I would certainly try and persuade air traffic to let me go. I don't know if I'd ever be in a position. You'd have to be right at the front of the queue, wouldn't you, to be in a position just to bully yourself onto the runway and get airborne. But I'd certainly try and say to air traffic, look, safe place for me is in the air. I need to get airborne.
And I wonder, if allowed to take off like that, or not allowed and taking off anyway, 10 minutes, how far away is that going to get you? Is it going to be far enough to avoid the effects of a nuclear detonation? I don't know.
I think in 10 minutes you could get a reasonable distance away. I think you would survive it. Yeah, I think there'd be a very good chance.
Well, and what I was going to say is if the first airplane that's blocking everybody goes, I'm willing to bet everybody else is going to follow suit. And by the way, I know you're thinking 10 minutes isn't that long, but if you put the nose down and don't worry about your climb rate and get the airspeed right up to barber pole, I would say in 10 minutes you can get a very good distance away from that area.
Yeah. And then the other situation, you're coming into Hawaii, and you learn that there are missiles also coming into Hawaii. Not a lot of options.
Diversion options. Yeah.
No, none.
I mean, where do you guys have as a diversion for Hawaii?
There is no diversion to Hawaii. It's
okay. So it's
like the longest ETOPS out there. Basically,
you have to call it a remote island procedure or something. I think that's what we call it.
I guess you could maybe go to like the Big Island and hope that none of the missiles, if there are multiple missiles, are not going to target that island, and perhaps you'd be far enough to survive it. I don't know.
But I mean, I think you're better off waiting to see. I mean, you've got to wait 10 minutes to see whether it's an actual missile attack or not. And if they land and you just hang around and going, well, I can't go anywhere else. I'm going to put down in the water if necessary, somewhere near the island where my passengers would have a chance of survival.
Yeah. What a nightmare scenario.
Well,
absolutely.
If I ever brought the 88 over to Hawaii, I'd better have everybody better have a life preserver and some oars because the Mad Dog's not making it.
No. Not at all. Yeah,
Love it.
that's a long trek. Well, anyway, that's a good. Thank you for sending that, Sim Captain Stone. Interesting to read about that Honolulu control facility. His recollection of this extremely stressful event.
Yeah, it reminds you, not quite the same thing. Reminds me of getting airborne out of Narita just before the huge earthquake and the tsunami they had that destroyed a lot of the coast of Japan and wrecked that nuclear power station. So we were literally an hour and a half, if that, beforehand. News of the disaster was coming through to the aircraft, and we had to kind of keep it quiet from the passengers because there was nothing anyone could do. We weren't able to get any information. No one could contact places, big cities in Japan, because all the electricity and phone lines were down. And we waited until we got back to the UK. There's no point in terrifying everyone or getting everyone all worried until we more or less were on the ground at the UK, when we advised them that there had been a disaster, and we were met at the aircraft by whole teams of counselors and people who spoke Japanese and people with telephones, so that everyone could try and call or whatever. So that was very well handled, I thought, by the company. But for the whole flight, I had to sit on the news. Obviously, my crew knew, and most of those crew were Japanese who had family on the island, who they had to just do their service and get on a smile. But also, they had to keep that information quiet.
That must be difficult.
For them, very, yes.
Hi, my name is Gustavo. I am a captain at Acme Junior, and this is how I got here. So, it all started in Portugal. I'm the Portuguese representative here. My father was very much into motorsports, and I guess that pretty much grew strong within me. Very early, I'd be watching my father racing and taking the wheel here and there. Not necessarily what I should be doing or what my mother would want him to be doing with me, but yeah, I had a lot of fun. I'll never forget probably the very first time I overtook a car. I barely could reach the wheel. I was just sitting on his lap. He just kept accelerating, say, "Hey, just go around the car." And I'm like, "What? What do you want me to do?" Just go. There I went, just doing my very, very best to keep the car straight, just passing the other car. I quite wonder what the other person thought as he saw this 5-year-old just overtaking him. And I wonder where my father had been looking at that time. He was actually looking at the way, or just happily looking to the other driver, proud of his son, just taking him over. But I guess my father was quite like that, always doing his very best to push me out of my comfort zone. The way aviation started for me, I was not that young anymore. I was already 19 years old. The bug hit fairly strong. I was in Porto, Portugal. At the time, it was the very first stop in the Red Bull races there. And it was my very first proper airshow, very first good exposure to airshow flying and to pure flying. At the time, I was not very impressed with the Red Bull races itself, but at the time, actually, I was more impressed with the Brighton Jet team. So I remember seeing those jets flying in formation, just blasting through the skies, and I thought to myself, it was like this ha-ha moment, and I was like, yep, this is gonna be the coolest thing I've ever seen. I really want to do this. And I remember telling my friend on the side, I'm gonna be a pilot, I'm gonna be up there soon. So, first thing to become a pilot, of course, I had to go through training. My very, very first thought, of course, to become a military pilot, join the Air Force in Portugal. Fortunately there, there are not too many vacancies. 100 applying to one vacancy. I pretty much passed everything, but I was not medically qualified. I actually tried 2 years in a row. In between, I was studying management at university while I try for another year. So the approach to Lisbon Airport would go right over my university. All I can say is those study sessions by the library with these huge full wall windows, with this beautiful view of planes coming in. Too much of a distraction, I must say. And I was just reaffirming that I was going to be a pilot, and just a matter of time until I could continue to pursue flying. Then summer of 2009, well, I've just finished all my research. At the time, the very best course of action I thought would be to come to Florida, USA. General aviation in general was much developed in the USA than in Portugal. So, yep, America it is. So I finished all my licenses in 1 year. So I had both FAA, American, and European, JA at the time. Then I instructed over there for about 1.5 years. Until my visa ended. I would already have about 1,500 hours. At the time, the market in Europe was really bad. I was applying everywhere, trying any possible thing I could find, and that's kind of how I ended up in Bali, Indonesia. So flight instructing in Bali, I must say I saved very good memories from those times. I had a very good life quality over there. I was living 30 feet from the pool and 60 feet from the beach. And just the Balinese people in general, the most friendly people I've ever met in the entire world. Of course, things were a little bit different than in a more Western world. I had quite different situations to deal with. So I remember this one afternoon, flying with these students, been already a long day, flying with quite a few students. So I'm flying with this new guy, and we just started the lesson, and he was starting to get pale, starting to feel sick. I asked him, what did you eat? I was trying to troubleshoot if it was something he ate or just seasickness, what was the situation, but he told me he didn't eat anything. And it was like 6 p.m. And I was like, why is that? Why I haven't eaten? He's like, oh, I'm fasting. You're fasting? Great. How am I supposed to teach you here if you cannot hold yourself together because you haven't eaten nothing all day? So why are you fasting? Oh, I'm a Muslim, Captain. Oh, you're a Muslim. All right, forgot that religion. Okay. So fast forward, as a more experienced flight instructor over there, every time I would meet a student, I would go, so tell me, what religion are you? And I would get a Buddhist, then I would get the Hindu, then I would get the Muslim, I would get the Christian. Like, oh great, Christian goes in the afternoon. Muslim goes right in the morning. No problem with fasting. And I'll put the Buddhist right in the middle. So yeah, Cessnas were fun, but there were no Brighton jet teams or super powerful extra 300s. So I knew that was just a step along the way. Pretty much as quickly as I could, I would start to fly aerobatics and progress in that world. So my very first ride was on my 21st birthday. I was in Indiantown, Florida, with Master CFI Jim Alsip. Fantastic instructor. Fast forward from that, I did most of my first aerobatic training in his Super Decathlon. A lot of fun, very challenging aircraft. A few weeks after I've been doing every Sunday as much as I could afford. Sebring aerobatic competition down in Florida was just coming up, and there I was looking desperately for a plane to compete on, because of course I didn't have one. And the only plane I could find was actually beautiful red Pitts S2A. So I did one quick flight to arm up in a plane. I remember my very first roll on the aircraft. I was probably not even inverted. My smile was already bigger than my face. And after I rolled fully the plane, I was like, oh boy, this just keeps getting better. And I'll never forget, as we're coming back to the airfield, I see this extra going vertical in aerobatic box with the smoke on, and it was just it's the magic of flight right there. Day one of competition, I'll never forget. I must have been so pumped. My very first dive into the box. I got so fast, so much energy. The very first figure was a 45 line, which is pretty much just 45 degrees going up the skies. But I had so much energy that throughout that one maneuver, I just used all my aerobatic box. So the rest of my sequence was actually quite far away from the judges that are looking at you from the ground. But they gave me a perfect 10 on that one. So that one was good. The rest were not as good, but the first one was solid. Of course, as a flight instructor, you're not making too much money. If I wanted to have all the fun I could flying aerobatics and pursue that dream, I also had to have a very good day job and a good career that could afford for that. So airlines would be the natural course. So of course, the very first year as a first officer, you're not making that much money. Life expenses are a little bit bigger in the USA than in Bali. Over there I was living with $200-300 a month and saving all the rest to go burning the extra. I went from that millionaire lifestyle to just a crash pad lifestyle. Quite a downgrade from the beach, but stepping stones on the process. So my least expensive hobby would then become skydiving, which was still expensive, but was a little bit more affordable than aerobatics. So I pretty much put in a reasonable amount of jumps. I finally got to finish my license I've always wanted. My first jump actually was when I was 16, even before I started flying. So my second year as a first officer, life quality is starting to improve, starting to get a better schedule. Tiny little bit more money, but not much, but especially more days off. So I've been doing a little bit more skydiving then. Summer is coming up. It was my 28th birthday. I've always wanted to go up in an air balloon and do a jump from an air balloon. And I promised myself before my 28th birthday, I'll do a jump. So it's the day before the jump. I was just walking around with friends in Walmart and we happened to see these funny custom suits. And of course there was a nice lion suit over there, which kind of would make up a nice little touch for my birthday as my zodiac sign is a Leo. So we were going up the balloon. It was a beautiful, still night actually, about to become a beautiful morning. The sun was just about to go up. So we're doing our usual checks before we do any jump, making sure every strap is in order, in good condition. We didn't forget anything. Everything is looking good with the parachute. Being very meticulous. I go to my friend as I usually do, so I have a second person checking me, making sure I didn't oversee anything. And he goes to me, tail. And I'm like, what? Kind of still looking at my straps and everything. I said, tail, your tail. I said, what? Finally click, my Leo tail. Oh, I wasn't thinking of that one. So here I am, taking my Leo tail, making sure I'm not pulling that one. Instead of my pilot chute is gonna deploy my canopy. So I'm not going down the skies, pulling my tail. Wondering why things are not working, why things are not happening, why it's still coming down. But yeah, it turned out to be my very favorite jump to date. So yeah, the big takeaway I must say is to never give up on your dreams. Always believe in yourself, always stay determined. Be aware that sometimes things don't go as linear as you want them to go. Like they say, the line towards success is a hell of a mess, and that is true. Where I am right now is not really what I thought I would be back then. It actually turned out to be much better. So maybe that very luck I didn't have back then. I wasn't that 1 in 100 that was lucky enough to get into the Air Force in Portugal. I later on got it, and I was the 1 in 100 that was the lucky winners of the green card lottery. So I could come back to the US and I could work and continue to pursue my aerobatic dreams and my flying passions. So somehow things find a way to work out if you keep believing. I'm Captain Gustavo, and this is how I got here.
Thank you, Captain Gustavo. Great to hear your story, and thank you, Captain Steve, for all the hard work that you put into doing Hi, H-I-G-H, How I Got Here, in the number 10 edition.
Oh, those are great. I love those.
Did you notice the splash screen that was displayed on the video?
That's a great picture.
Yeah, that's a great picture.
His balloon jump.
Great job.
I'll include that in the show notes so you can see Captain Gustavo jumping out of the balloon in his lion suit.
Those crazy skydivers. You always
I
need a little
know.
bit of extra flair, right? Not enough just to jump out of a hot air balloon.
Yeah.
Yeah. Crazy.
Well, the lion suit's okay. It's being the Tin Man to be the problem.
It'd be a little more difficult.
Yeah. You come down a bit faster too, I suspect.
Yeah.
Oh man. Let's see this quickly. We're getting very close to the end of the show here. Probably nearing the 3-hour mark for sure.
Over it.
Well, we had a little technical
that's right.
issue at the beginning, and so we have to kind of estimate how long that was. So, anyway, Jez sent this in, and it says, a question for Dana, and only Dana. Okay, you ready, Dana?
I'm ready.
Okay. I think it was episode 307, which discussed strobes and the weight on wheels switch enabling them. Fabulous discussion of some technical aspects. But with all these technical terms, don't you just shorten them for ease of use? For example, Dana, weight on wheels. Surely you have an acronym for this?
Wow. Wow.
Yes, he does.
Wow.
Wow.
Loving the podcast. Thank you, APG crew, from Jez. Thank you, Jez.
Thank you, Jez.
Very clever. Let's see. Another short one I think we were going to play was... Oh, Louisiana Steve. Now, I got a chance to meet up with Louisiana Steve, and several people in the community did as well, at Oshkosh. His full name, his real name, Steve Nicholson. I hope he doesn't mind me saying that. He says, I'm writing today to share 2 public safety announcements. Okay, first, because of any and all single-engine aircraft, firstly, beware of any and all single-engine aircraft in the southern Louisiana area as I passed my PPL check ride today.
Woohoo.
Good job, sir. Yeah, brilliant. Well done.
Yay. Congratulations.
Congratulations, Steve. All right.
Nicely.
Fade that out. And let's see. And then the next thing that he has here is, secondly, please be aware of pet rodents pinching your rear end when sitting on the toilet in Baltimore. See attached link and you will see why. I'm not sure I even want to cover this one because it's kind of sad. Anyway, he says, hope all is well in APG land. Tailwinds to all, Louisiana Steve. Okay, the link that he sent us. Not sure how many of you heard about this incident, which is...
Everyone.
Yeah.
Pretty sure everyone heard about it.
Spirit Airlines employee told a student, a college student, 21-year-old college student, you should know better, to flush emotional support hamster down the toilet. The student alleges. Baleen Aldacosia, I'm not sure, said she flushed her emotional support hamster down the toilet after Spirit Airlines refused her furry pet on the flight. And she said that she called ahead to Spirit Airlines before her flight from Baltimore to South Florida on November 21st, 2017, regarding traveling with her dwarf hamster Pebbles. Dwarf hamster? I thought they're all dwarf.
Extra tiny hamster.
Extra tiny. Okay. Pebbles, the hamster's name. Bless its heart, rest in peace. She claimed the airline told her it was not a problem to bring her hamster on the flight. However, when the student arrived at the airport, she said the airline refused to let Pebbles on the plane. She said that she did not have many options since her family was in Florida and her friends were hours away. The student claimed a Spirit employee suggested she either flush Pebbles down the toilet or let the animal free. She skipped her flight and tried to rent a car instead, but she said that she was too young to rent one, so she did what she felt was the most humane choice.
I don't know about that.
Sure, that was the most humane choice. She was scared. I was scared. It was horrifying trying to put her in the toilet. I was emotional. I was crying. I sat there for a good 10 minutes crying in the stall.
Well, if she was emotional, that's what the animal's supposed to stop her. It's an emotional support animal, for heaven's sake.
I don't think she quite understands what emotional support animal, what the reason.
I think there's a lot of things she doesn't understand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Anyway, you can read the rest of the article. It'll be in the show notes. But it's just sad that this 21-year-old, you'd think she'd be able to think a little bit more clearly and not flush a living creature down the toilet like that. That's just...
Yeah, where it's going to sit in the sewers with all the alligators until it becomes a monster hamster, and it's going to come out and attack us all.
It might. He'll be Pebbles will be after Belen. I'm not sure how you pronounce Belen.
Get our own back.
Oh man. Well, we're going through these pretty quickly. Let's just do one more here. Jim Mercado, the designer of the famous APG show logo, the one with the wings, and it says Acme Airlines on it. Very, very cool. And let's see, he sent us some audio feedback, and it's a cute little story regarding ATIS. If I can find it. It's right here.
Hey, Captain Jeff, Nick, Steph, and Dana. It's design pilot Jim Mercado here from the Bay Area. Hey, all the talk about ATIS lately on the past shows reminded me of a story I wanted to share about an ATIS experience I had. So one day I was flying back to San Carlos on an instrument flight plan. And being a good pilot, of course, I picked up ATIS as far out as I possibly could. And it just happened to be ATIS whiskey that day. And so I wrote it down, and I was flying along with my brother-in-law, who was not a pilot that day, who was sitting in the front seat of the airplane with me, intently listening to all of the radio, which he enjoyed a lot. Anyway, so I got to the NorCal approach, and of course I said, I checked in and said, I've got whiskey. And the controller said, Roger, whiskey's current. And so I confirmed, yes, I've got whiskey. So proceed inbound and hand it off to the next controller. And that next controller said, Cessna tail number I was flying, confirm that you have whiskey on board. So I said, yes, Roger, Cessna 1234, I've got whiskey on board. Roger, continue. So continue, and then finally hand it off to the San Carlos Tower, which for some reason on that day, he called and said, yeah, clear to land, and just whiskey is current. And so one more time I said, yes, I've got whiskey. So cleared to land, I landed, no problem, taxied in, shut down the airplane. And I looked over at my brother-in-law, who was sitting in the right seat, and he had this kind of worried look on his face. And I said, hey, what's up, dude? And he's like, yeah, so, I have a question for you. And I hope I'm not offending you. And I said, okay. He said, Jim, are you, involved in any kind of, alcohol transportation or something? And I looked at him and I said, well, why do you say that? And he said, well, you've been talking about having whiskey on board, and all of these controllers are asking you if you've got whiskey. So I had a fun time explaining to him about ATIS that day and about the phonetic alphabet and how that changes. But I'll never forget that experience. So anytime I'm flying along and I hear whiskey, I always think about that day flying along with my brother-in-law. Anyway, that's my story. Take care.
Thanks, Jim.
I love it. Good story.
Makes me want to pour a cold one.
Sounds delicious.
Yeah.
I would like a nice whiskey.
So it's the first day of Lent, Ash Wednesday, right now that we're recording the show. And once again, I'm going to try to make it all the way through the Lenten period without drinking alcohol. So,
how has that worked out in the past for you?
Not worked out well in the past, but I'm more determined this
more
year
motivated.
than ever. More motivated than ever. Yeah.
I'm sure your trainer would be very happy with that.
Yeah, I know. See, that's
your motivation right there.
That's the component of this that is different from years past. So we'll see. And anyway, the guy by the way, my personal trainer scheduler guy, he noticed that I hadn't been in a while, and he sent me a text. So how's the personal training going? I said, well, I've been busy, but it's good. I'm glad that somebody's on my case. Steph is another one that's always been on my case about exercise. So.
Yeah, well, anyway. Steph has something as far as
Oh no, that's not for public.
Oh,
consumption.
okay.
Sorry.
All right.
You should have told me that.
I think I started to, but failed to.
Failed to convey. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
No. That one's
communication is important.
between us for the moment.
Okay.
All right.
Nothing to be said.
Well, with that, folks, we're going to go ahead and call it quits for this episode 311. If you want to learn more about the show, head over to airlinepilotguy.com and hopefully cross our fingers that the site will load. We've still had a couple of hiccups over there at the airlinepilotguy.com site. But we're doing our best to keep it on track and keep it loading and providing information for you, like how you can learn more about the crew, the community, merchandise, coffee fund, the live page, and so much more. So again, airlinepilotguy.com. We have a couple of apps for both Android and iOS platforms. Airline Pilot Guy, just do a search in your app store for that. And it's free, ad-free, etc. It's a great thing to have. And occasionally, if you're lucky, you'll get a push notification. And social media. Go ahead, Steph.
All right. You can find us on Twitter. That's at APG Crew. We're all there. We can answer tweets sent to us there. So stop on by and hang out with the community. Also over on Facebook, facebook.com/airlinepilotguy. You can share links there. We talk about a lot of different aviation related things. Members of the community definitely share interesting and funny aviation related memes and news articles, and we're all there as well. So stop on by the social medias.
Excellent. And we also have something called Slack. We have a group on Slack, and Hillel will tell us about that.
APG listeners, please join us on our Slack team. On Slack, we share news and ideas. We suggest episode and plain tales topics. We plan meetups and events. To get into the Slack team, please send me a tweet with your preferred email address to @HI11E1, and I'll send you an invitation. That's Hillel @HI11E1, and see you in Slack.
Again, not enough can be said about emphasizing the replacement of L, or 1 for L. So check it out. Join us on Slack. And until next time, wishing you clear skies, unlimited visibility, and tailwinds. Take care, and God bless.
Cheers, y'all.
Bye, everybody.
Adios.
Muchachos.
Hasta la vista, baby.
Talons, Douglas.
Talons, Douglas. Absolutely. All right. That's going to be definitely over 3, but oh well. And I had so much more. We had so much more that we wanted to cover, but we run out of time.
Oh, no, not again.
Again. Over and over and over again.
Time.
Yep. We're always.
Did you notice that opposing bases have started growing? They've got a little bit of drift. I mean, I think their first show was like smack on half an hour or something.
Oh.
They're getting... Yeah,
it's the APG effect?
Yeah.
Yes. That's what happens.
As is Plain Talking UK.
Uh-huh.
I mean, they're up to like 2.5 hours now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you see, 3 hours is the new half an hour.
That's right. That's right.
So I guess the only thing we can do then is to go to 4. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Please no.
No, I want to go to bed.
Nick will never sleep. He'll just have to be up all night. And special
I'll
shout
be-
out to Nick
I'll
for
sleep.
staying up late again while not feeling well and
you need to get
suffering
some
through
sleep,
this
sir.
with us.
Good job, Nick. Thank you. Although I'll probably be up before you. I got to be up at 4 a.m. local.
Really?
Yeah.
That's 9 o'clock in the morning for me. So I'll be up by then, for heaven's sake.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would think so.
But it only gives you about 8 hours, doesn't it?
Yeah, just about 8 hours. And
Yeah,
it's-
well,
go to
Oh,
bed,
isn't it?
Dana. Go to bed.
I'm going
All
shortly. Very shortly.
Cool. All right, folks. Thanks for hanging out with us in the chat room, the live chat room. It's always fun to watch the conversation going on over there. And thank you for being such a big part of our community and the show. And until next time, I'm sure you'll probably see us around during the week. But if not, we'll see you next week whenever we do this thing again.
Oh,
Have a
yeah.
great
We're going
weekend.
to have to do it again? Oh, no.
Yeah, we got to do it again.
The
whether
bad
you
news
want to or
is
not.
you have to be here. It's contractual obligation.
Yeah.
Oh.
Or else you don't get any pay.
Can I have some sick leave?
We'll have to look at the contracts about that one. Yeah.
Okay.
You have to take it up with HR.
Well, as long as I still get paid.
Yeah.
Yep,
You'll get,
checks
you'll
in the
get the
mail.
same amount that you always do.
We'll double
Exactly.
it even.
I'll double it. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, double it.
It's
Hey,
nilch.
wow, you're so generous.
An APG green slip.
Oh, thanks,
There
man.
you go.
All right. Well, good night, everybody. I'm going to go ahead and stop
Goodbye.
the broadcast.
Good
Cheers.
night. Bye-bye.